This is Monica Perez, joined today by an independent researcher, a podcast host, the host of the Underclass podcast, and definitely involved in hosting already, sometimes host Already Dead. How do you describe your involvement?
Yeah, so I kind of have like 4 shows going on right now, and like the original, obviously my original solo work, and my kind of like what the Underclass podcast obviously is what I originally started, right? And that was what in April of 2023, I think. So it's honestly it's in its infancy still, in many ways, even though I've kind of been at it seemingly nonstop for you know what I
Well, a
mean?
lot
That's
has
what
gone on. So this is
so much.
Austin Picard, if you don't know, but it is a conversation. Our conversation is what a lot of people have been waiting for. So I think we're really on the same page. We probably think the same way, reach some of the
Yeah.
same conclusions. So when I didn't even wasn't saying like, oh, I'm talking to Austin Picard, but it just popped up and like coming up on my streams. And I started getting emails and DMs and stuff like, oh, I'm so psyched. There are people right here like, this is going to be epic. I'm
I love
excited
it.
for this. Been looking forward to this. And
Well, hey,
really, I
say
don't
what now,
normally,
my people?
yeah, I just, I don't always get that. Sorry, my camera's a little
I
bit weird.
think that honestly, we have to have some sort of a mutual audience to some extent because you have had more of an influence and impact on me personally than you probably realize. And when you came on Already Dead, I think I kind of alluded to that fact because I'm telling you, Monica, it like during the years of COVID, like you and Brad gave me this sort of lifeline and a life preserver to just you know logical common sense perspective and objectivity and like pursuing the truth in an objective manner in a way that was like you were attempting to be as unbiased as you possibly could be, and that is something that first of all I admire and respect more than anything as far as a core value. And so that resonated with me obviously from day one whenever I found you and discovered your work, and then seeing like of course the Boston Marathon bombing coverage that you did. My
I
God,
was on the radio. I
so
mean, I
crazy.
was getting like real, so I kind of know now how feds work because I was getting real, like people acting like listeners telling me the biggest thing about that was don't say you're sure about anything. So when I'm like, I'm absolutely positive that the Trump assassination attempt was staged, they
I
don't
love
like
it.
that. They want you to
Oh, no.
say, looks like it, but I could be wrong. Like that's so. I mean, they were telling me, and I was like, "What? I'm not. No, I'm absolutely positive." I was
Right.
too stupid. Like I was stupid.
No.
But you are asking me, and I want to run this by you because I don't think you're gonna like it, and it's like really about the fires.
Mm,
So I was here while houses were burning, while the trees in my yard were burning. My back porch had already burned to the ground. So I was here watching, and my neighbor never left. He is such a Chad. He never
wow.
left, and he just put out fires all night. Like you can see, like all the hedges are like in between our two houses, they're
Right.
burned. And he just and he said, "Look, I'm not a hero. I have a stake in this. My insurance is terrible." I was like,
That's so funny.
right on, like whatever it takes. So he was telling me, I saw some of this, but what he was saying was, and I could see right across the street from his house that he said he was all night long. The a tree would go up like a Roman candle. That's the word he uses.
Mhm.
It would go up, and especially a palm will do that. But most of this palms it was so windy that their fronds were blown off, the dead ones. But
Mm.
stuff like that, they're really heavy and hard, and they would travel and they would just land on a house and burn it down. And another thing that was happening was, or the thing that was happening that I witnessed with my own eyes is there are vents in your attic, maybe not everybody, but there's venting in your attic. And when it gets super hot, it can pull air in. I mean, I could be wrong about this, but I
Mhm.
was watching it and this is what I was explained. It pulls air and embers and stuff in. So it starts in the attic. And once the attic is on fire, you cannot save the house. So this happened a few
Wow.
houses down. A house went on fire, and I was like, oh, I hope it doesn't get the next house. And it did. And I told my son, go run and get a firefighter. Like, let's see if we can save this next house. And that one went up because it was close together. But the one next to it, they had their driveways were next to each other. So it was a double driveway. And then they saved the next house. So I was watching that. You could see what trees would go up, like dried out hedges would go up, underbrush would go up. Citrus did not, olives, even my citrus trees, they're dead now because of the heat. They were green at the end of the day. Like they did not go on fire. Now they're dead. It really bugs me. And I thought they were alive. They were showed signs of life, but I don't think they're going to make it. But anyway, live oaks I guess they hold a lot of water. So people are saying, why were trees standing and houses not? Because lumber is firewood and green trees are not. That's what I was watching. And then, but there's no way all these wildfires in the world are happening for no reason when it's been dry. I lived in Northern California during a real severe drought 20, 30 years ago. No, there was no wildfire. So something's happening. And my feeling is this is what my conclusion is. And I was looking at it. It's like, who has a state? Do you mind if I just go? I have like a million.
I love it.
You're going to just talk for an hour and a half, but you were asking me before air. And I
got to hear this because there's so much. This makes sense to me, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. So keep going. So,
okay, good. Thank you. Because people are mad at me. They're like, no, it's directed energy and it's laser beams from outer space. I'm like, not on my street. So we thought it was arson. I said, no, they sent somebody up there into that dried out brush and they lit it on fire. And then the pictures were coming out of it, coming off of electrical wires. Now the electricity was shut off 3 hours before the fire started. Yeah. But I learned that, and those lines were not broken. But what I learned was they don't turn the high tension power lines off when they turn residential, and electricity can't just stop. It doesn't stop. It rediverts. So it actually can send surges through the high power lines. So it surged and I think that in the wind or whatever it arced and it's through sparks. But I'm thinking it was so easy to prevent that. The government has the obligation to do it. Insurance companies should have the desire to do it. And the electric company should have the desire and the mandate to do it. And it was in the way you would do it was actually in the mandate for the electric company to clear the brush under those particular power lines. It was just not a rocket science. It doesn't have to be the whole mountain. And so I looked into it, and of course, BlackRock owns BlackRock and Vanguard own both Mercury Insurance, which is the big insurer, and the electric company, and of course, they I'm sure own Gavin Newsom. So you've got all the three entities that would be interested. But this guy Pedro Pizarro runs Edison International, which is the parent company. And if you look into him, this is when I finally was like, okay, now I get it. If you look into him, he's one of those like UN politician guys. Like he's all about sustainability. He shows up with everything's a fucking circle rainbow. He's just, like he's the guy. Right. And he has this desire, which he's mouthpiecing for whomever, that by 2045, the entire energy system needs to be completely redone. And I believe his focus is Southern California. And the second stated reason is wildfires. To prevent wildfires. So this guy acts like he cares about wildfires. How are you going to motivate people in Southern California who are no longer, I'm not the only one who's not going to be able to get decent insurance. No one is. Southern California is considered uninsurable. Something's going to have to happen. So people are going to be motivated, especially by this. The poor people in my section is like more working class, and the Palisades, which is the rich people, everybody is just triangulating into, yes, we please save us from this. And so my assumption here and elsewhere is they even if there is no drought, or even if there is a drought, they tell you not to water. They enforce these drought conditions. So even if there isn't a drought, if they tell you not to water, it's effectively a drought, and you can have wildfires that way. So I feel like it is the kind of thing where we don't know where the fire is going to start necessarily, but if any huge part of LA that burns is fine with me. I don't know about the Palisades fire that might have had something else. It was something else, but this was very preventable. No question about it. We spend $8 trillion a year on government. I think that's federal government alone. I don't want feds anywhere, but I'm just saying, if you got one thing to do, right, police and fire, whatever, even a minarchist would say that. I'm an anarchist for this reason, but yeah, so that's what I think happened. They lie hopped it, but in a way that it's happening everywhere. It's just eventual. It's just the lie hop is like, what order is it going to happen? So like, I would warn you, there may be a disaster coming to you, and it doesn't necessarily have to be space beams from outer space. And that's it. You can talk for the rest of your time.
No, Monica. No, I just I completely like, first of all, I think that makes all the sense in the world as far as just ineptitude, but also considering not only ineptitude, but like a manufactured crisis in many ways. And I think that's a lot of what happens more often than not, problem, reaction, solution, right? And
yeah, they could have prepared better. I looked over the couple of days before. What you need, it's predictable that your water is going to stop working, by the way. I came here and the hoses were dry and we were just using pool water. That's totally predictable. It happened in the campfire in Paradise. So when Newsom was preparing, what he should have had done, they were preparing for it a day before. The winds were crazy. They should have had tanker trucks coming from all over, because the tanker trucks have to go back and forth to a reservoir. They can go to any reservoir. They fill up and they come. And all you would need is just 1,000 of them. They don't even need to bring the water. You just need the trucks, and he didn't do that. So like there was a lot. I wouldn't call it ineptitude. I would say it's intentional.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, manufactured crisis, definitely, as far as like the intentional aspect of it. But yeah, I'm interested to know, because it's just, I feel like there are layered operations that are being conducted at every level so very often. And it's like, I just, like, first of all, I saw firefighter impersonators would legitimately had actual fire trucks who had come from, this was so crazy, who were members of Antifa allegedly, and had come down from Portland, and had, this is one of the craziest stories that I found during that time, because there were all these reports of arsonists, right, potentially starting at least at certain like crucial areas where
there's definitely that. I figured that was paid for.
Right. Which was the one I forgot. There were so many of them at the time. I'm trying to remember the one that was specifically a few days later, started at a homeless encampment allegedly. And like the police chiefs like actually did a public report with the local news at the time, which was very interesting and worthwhile. And yeah, PG&E very, very much involved in a lot of that. I remember and by the first, I have to address the fact that it is seemingly strategic in the locations as far as high-speed rails, the high-speed rail line is concerned. That has been within the framework of this, Agenda 2030, Operation Lockstep, whatever
you know how much cheaper desalinization plants are than high-speed rails?
How much?
Just you could complete for the one first track that they were thinking of, you could get all of LA's water from the ocean.
Wow.
It's nothing. Yeah. I mean, it's not nothing, but they have ships that do it. They delivered to Haiti after the earthquake 800,000 gallons of fresh water every single day from one U.S. ship. So I don't need a high-speed rail. I just need to water my lawn.
Absolutely. I think it's really the crux of it is really the facilitation of the smart city 15-minute smart city infrastructure, the diabolical agenda playing out as far as you're seeing, like what was the most recent fires in was it North Carolina, South Carolina?
Yes, like these are places that are wet. Like there should never.
No. Australia as well. It seemed to be like very, very similar in many ways.
But that is a dry place. It'll be easier to get that going. But wet stuff, like you would never think. That's why people are like, why didn't the trees burn? And I said, I was taught as a child, trees don't burn. My father would say, like, you don't have to worry about the trees, worry about the houses. Right. Like he would prepare us for fires. Say, get away from the houses, go to the edge of the street. He said, but green trees don't burn.
Right. And you remember the sightings, right, of the UAPs that they were claiming were being sighted above the fires at the time, which is another aspect of like some of the footage that had gone out on like mainstream media actually were showing these unidentified aerial phenomena, right?
Yes.
And it also
lots of drones, by the way.
I know that's
and then they're like, we can't have civilian drones, only surveillance drones. Like, okay, but why don't you fly like a bucket of water? It
Yeah.
was all grounded. And
Mhm.
I was listening, one of the things that day, they said, well, we would send up our choppers, but Biden's presence at the airport closed the airspace. It's like, okay,
Wow.
just tell me it's the wind. Like, just fucking
Yeah.
lie to me. I just can't
That's
listen
so
to this
crazy.
anymore.
What did you think about the reports of the mayor, like, on a diplomatic mission, on
Oh, they
orders
got
from
rid of
Biden to
her
go to
and sent her.
Africa while
Yeah.
she's, like, sending messages, like, fully acknowledging that she had prior knowledge
Oh
of
my
this
gosh. No, I
potentially
missed
happening.
that, but I figured they
Oh,
just
yeah.
got her out of the way. And I don't
What was
listen
his
too much
name?
to that. So,
James O'Keefe. It was
oh,
James O'Keefe. She got James O'Keefed. So, yeah, who knows how
isn't he a
accurate and
little?
legit. Oh, yeah, he glows
He's
like
a
the
little.
sun, basically. You know
But
what I
hey,
mean?
you
At
get
least
your
in my
80% of that stuff is true. Like,
yeah,
glowing. Okay, you can see it.
exactly.
It's fine.
I know. That's another thing I thought was funny about. What do you think about this Ian Carroll situation with the collaboration with Candace, but then also going on Rogan? I'm very skeptical. I will say, and I don't want to like assassinate his character. I don't know him personally.
Anyone who goes from 0 to 60 overnight you've got to explain this to me. I'm not going to name names right now, but someone told me that you were saying something I said like day one. I was like, this person, first of all, I've been researching that topic and this is not publicly available information. So where'd you get it? And why are you on all 4 of the podcasts I listen to and I never heard of you before? And why
hmm
do you get to say stuff that nobody else is allowed to say? And
Exactly.
then since then, everyone says that stuff.
hmm
So I think
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. It seems like
So anyway, as
the
soon as they go
new
0 to
narrative.
60, it's over because
Oh
I've
yeah.
been plugging along for a long time, which is I'm fine. I love my community and everything. And please
hmm
God save me from actually ever going viral or anything. But it's hard to first of all, you get suppressed. You
Yes.
get surprised. I've seen my YouTube
Absolutely.
stuff. I've asked like 15 people, go watch my YouTube video, and the number of views does not go up. Like there's
Mm.
no chance on earth you get fair treatment. So anybody who's popping is, I think, there for a reason.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And
So when
I
that
think
guy
that
went up overnight, I don't listen to him. That's the other
yeah.
thing. I'm done proving that stuff's fake. Like I'm like,
I love you so much,
swipe
Monica.
left.
I swear to God, you're speaking to my soul at this moment in time because I am very just like kind of at a loss and a little bit frustrated when it comes to like, and I understand like you know trying to remain objective, but giving the benefit of the doubt in when it's undeserved and like what are we talking about here, and especially when again, like these narratives have it's very strange. It seems like new narrative gatekeepers who are kind of providing the misdirection and blowing the smoke in mirrors, you know?
Absolutely. But I'll tell you the reason that it's worth going, continuing to do what we're doing.
Mhm.
First of all, it is such a fucking time waster to think that the political process is working. So I'm not going to get into this with you, but we should actually do a show together. Like I'll tell you mine, you tell me yours. This guy, Devin Archer, was pardoned by Trump. And
Yeah.
he's a big time Biden crony. Like I went on
Mhm.
tinfoil hats to talk about how fucked up this situation is, murder, everything, like just unbelievable. The connections are undeniable. And Trump is the guy who pardons him. But the process, like that guy, the judge overturned his conviction totally wrongfully, and the appeals process worked. Like every court along the way, including the Supreme Court, was like, no way, that guy has to go to jail. Like it was amazing. It took Trump's intervention to I was like, wow, this process actually is trying to work.
Mm.
So the fact that it does, and like Syria, people were like, hey, Obama, we don't want to invade Syria. And he's like, oh, shit. Okay. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, a bunch of guys we don't know invaded Syria, but I guess it's
Right.
over now. So you try, it kind of works. But the fact that it doesn't work is something we need to, for whatever good it does, we need to make it clear we do not consent. We don't believe the system works. I don't think it's okay. I think you do have a civic responsibility to register your protests, more or less. You don't have to vote, but you have to say, like, I do not consent. Like, St. Peter is going to ask me and be like, okay, could you please go to Chrono Mark? Like,
Right.
37 years and 50, like I said repeatedly, I do not consent. So I think you have to, just so that the next generation isn't just swept under the TikTok rug or whatever. Like, we have to have people. That's what I think.
The gradual tiptoe toward totalitarianism. We are headed to this is the pivot to the technocracy that we're witnessing right now. And I don't know why people don't seem to be able to acknowledge that fact. And it seems to be very convenient for many of them who can't seem to summon the courage to mention Peter Thiel's name, which is right.
So let me fold that into what we're here to talk about today.
Okay.
Obviously, we could talk constantly, like just next door to each other and talk over the fence. But so you see Elon Musk in a church with his kid on his shoulders and his hands outstretched like a cross, and literally says like "New Order of the Ages" or whatever. I think he actually did it in Latin. Like, no, did you see that tweet? I thought it was a joke. I thought it was like the Onion. You didn't see this?
I didn't.
I thought it was a joke. It was he really did it, and people like, he's such a troll. I'm like, that's not fucking cool. Like, that's not,
man.
like he's a troll. They're trolls. It's like, they're not trolls. Like, they control, they kill people. They're stealing our money to enslave us, and then they're laughing in our faces. So I think that's him, feeding schizos, dog whistling, or like, I guess there's different factions of schizo now. I mean, I'm obviously a schizo, but like,
we're black pilled, as they say.
I am so white.
What is that? I know, but we get it's the new pejorative, like conspiracy theorists, to undermine the
beware false hope.
Voice.
Yeah, you're literally required from a moral point of view to this guy does not support the Bill of Rights. He does not practice the 10 Commandments. Like, you can't, this is not, use your head. So I'm here to just say there is objective truth and objective morality. But so he's there to like dog whistle or whatever. But when I listen to your stuff, when I think about it, I found this. Have you ever seen this?
God.
Have you ever seen this? 1968. Like, why was this on my shelf? 1968. So this is Senator Robert Kennedy, the man, the mysticism, the murder. It's about the killer cult. And so when I read that stuff, look into JFK, any of that stuff, I did all that David Berkowitz stuff, read The Ultimate Evil. We talked about that. It looks like you can always find these connections. It's amazing to me, and they're really there. And I live like on the outskirts of Pasadena, man. This place was an outpost for that stuff, if not like a ground zero for all the weird space stuff. Anyway, so how far does this reach? Like, does it reach to Musk and Trump? Do they know it? Is it everywhere? Man. Is it a faction? Like, I like to go big picture down. Can you give me that overview?
I think that, there is a cabal of elite special interests playing, especially like that seem to perfectly align and run parallel with this sort of philosophy that is very well established. And it's this well established occult underground that also ties directly into the pedophile underground, which I had no real understanding. I came into this basically as a blank slate. I of course had my preconceived ideas, which were very much, what did you just show me? I didn't see
The Eye of the Chicken Hawk. I'm afraid to even open it.
Simon Dovey just followed me and Jose because we've just been basically talking about his work.
I can't read it yet. I feel like I need to not be in the middle of like,
it's dark,
basically in Gaza. I can't.
Oh my God.
I shouldn't joke about that. I live in what looks like a war zone. I cannot read dark stuff right now.
I agree with you. It's
like, the pedophile stuff. Yes. And that's got to be real because people are sick. Like that's not true. Like, I'm not sure about human hunting parties where they have children. I am though, because of that woman's testimony.
I am now.
Oh
I
yeah,
didn't
he's strong.
realize, Monica. I'll
Yeah,
explain something with Concora
it's true. Yeah.
that really drives that home as a potential reality, especially considering I think it was John Wedger, the former Scotland Yard detective, who's done a lot of phenomenal work. I think he just went on Nick Bryant's show. William Ramsey had him on as well.
Wow, Nick.
But yeah, he's done a lot of amazing work exposing really that one he essentially was uh, really targeted and forced into retirement essentially because of the what he was exposing, like Ted Heath, prime ministers who were connected to pedophilia, well organized child trafficking in the UK.
Yeah, those
And
dossiers. There was like
yes,
140. Nobody ever talks about that. I
no,
remember that. I
mhm,
remember that. There were all these dossiers pedophiles in Margaret Thatcher's cabinet. That must have been
mhm,
kind of sad because if you thought of her like a Reagan character
right.
when your heroes get
Oh my
destroyed.
God. Margaret Thatcher, she's connected to Jimmy Savile,
Ugh.
oh my God, funding the Oak Ridge facility in Canada, which was basically have you read Steve Smith's book called The Psychopath Machine? He was a victim at the Oak Ridge facility in Canada. And he was basically a hippie who was like 18 years old or had just turned 18 or something. And he was like hitchhiking across Canada, and it was like in the depth of winter, and so he basically broke into a car at night because he didn't want to freeze to death, and he fell asleep in the car, and then the cops, the authorities, like discovered him in this vehicle, and then I don't know if they were called first. I can't remember the details there, but then he's got a tab of acid on him, and he claims that he hadn't yet taken this, and it was his first hit that he was ever going to take as well, and that he and a friend were going to they had a plan that they were going to go to the West Coast basically, and then they were going to drop acid while they were at the beach, and and so he then gets as he's being accosted by the authorities, he essentially just drops the tab, so he doesn't get a sentence due to the LSD, obviously, which would have been a huge criminal sentence as far as like at the time specifically, but even now. But still, it's very interesting because he basically charts a course where he was they violated his rights because they were looking for a specific profile that he fit personally, which was that they were trying to conduct experiments at the Oak Ridge facility at the time that were very much in league with MK Ultra and the Dr. Ewan Cameron Montreal experiments, and that basically they wanted him to be a test subject, a part of a test group that were essentially being utilized to directly pair with sociopathic maniacs, psychopaths, and then they would conduct experiments, putting them completely naked while chained together in rooms where they were supplying food through straws in the wall, like confined spaces where they would just watch what happens while they put them on camera. And
Wow.
and
Yeah.
yeah, these are people who would like Peter Woodcock, who were like legitimate like psycho predators who had like murdered children and sexually abused them, and then he's being shackled to them, and specifically Peter Woodcock in this scenario, and he claims that they were utilizing sociopaths because they were attempting to what he claimed was a psychopath machine. They were trying to, and this Peter Woodcock was legitimately sent onto a kibbutz in Israel and was put on the front lines with the IDF for a certain point in time, and so it just will blow your mind when you realize like this again pattern recognition that's undeniable at a certain point, and yeah, so the Psychopath Machine made me really
I'm
consider
sure I
because
have that book. I've seen it. It has like the fonts on the front is kind of sketchy, kind of like
yeah,
yeah. So when you say so I have this Jim Keith, the mass control, mind control, where he goes into Ewan Cameron and
mhm.
West, the
Oh
people,
gosh,
the doctors who definitely did stuff like that. Oh, that the guy with the Spanish name, Diego.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I
So
know.
we know they do it when in this Psychopath Machine. Woodcock, who is he saying? Does he know who it is? Could he identify the institution or the individuals who were doing this?
Yeah, it was I'm trying to remember the name of the let me pull it up here because I have the name of the actual doctor who was conducting a lot of this, and it really, like, honestly, when you begin to realize like what was being conducted at Oak Ridge, it was basically this Oak Ridge facility, and this is where doctors were torturing these patients on the Ontario Medical Mental Health Center.
Oh, Cameron, I
Essentially,
think, was from Canada.
yeah, Dr. Ewan Cameron was definitely in Canada, and he was conducting the
Yeah.
Montreal experiments at the time, so it ran perfectly parallel. And I believe there was actually actual documentation that proved that they were getting their specific psychedelic drugs in the various the various different drugs that they were administering to these patients throughout their experiments. They were basically getting through and employees of the Crown. It's very interesting because this is where you have, like, for example, I found it interesting that basically you have this German Brotherhood that's apparently connected to this, this Oak Ridge facility, who had been actually going to visit Peter Woodcock privately at when he was located there. I found it very strange because it seemed to, like, provide a connection to this a potential Nazi safe haven that had been set up through paperclip in many ways in the Gladio, network through the various rat lines that were staged post World War II, and it also kind of combined this notion of mind control experimentation directly coming from these Nazi experiments that were specifically.
What decade was that? Woodcock and Oak Ridge?
This was in the 70s, right? So it was.
Yeah.
Let me.
Those guys would have still kind of been in their prime.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it's very interesting because it seems like they were conducting rituals in the nearby area as well.
I mean, they didn't just have rocket scientists, right?
No. And Dr. Elliot Barker was the individual who was really the most responsible for the Oak Ridge experiments. And John Ronson even wrote about it in the psychopath test a little bit as well. And I found it very important because that was where you have the connection of Elliot Barker, who was running these experiments. It was called the MAPS program. It was one of his brainchildren, and I'll explain that in just a moment, just briefly, because it is very interesting what the kind of like the manipulative techniques psychologically that were in practice. And by the way, the homie in the chat's telling me to tell you about Kerry Thornley process and Oswald. So we have to.
I definitely. I mean, that is for sure where I want to focus because that's stuff I've really looked into, and I didn't. The Maury Terry in The Ultimate Evil touched on the process thing. Actually, he was sued, so subsequent editions of his book does not have it. That's why I always get a first edition, because when it hits the stands and the shit hits the fan, the second edition will pull some of that stuff out, and that's what they did. So always get the first edition of that one.
100%.
And but he even in the first edition, he doesn't he alludes to it, and but like when I watched everything I could watch on David Berkowitz, all of his interviews, and I don't think he really talks about the LA connection at all, like the totally national. I don't know, but I really want to understand that. But go where you were going, and you're going to get here, aren't you?
Yes, I will make it back around, I promise. Yeah. But I do want to just mention the fact that this Dr. Elliot Barker, he was basically running this this strange manipulation, psychological programming operation that was seemingly, he handpicked these psychopaths, and he had gotten this batch of LSD from a government-sanctioned lab, Connaught Laboratories, from the University of Toronto, and they had been selected on the basis of verbal ability. Most relatively young and intelligent offenders between 17 and 25 And in the October 1968 issue of the Canadian Journal of Corrections, it basically explained how they were led into what he named the Total Encounter Capsule, which was a small room painted bright green, and asked them to remove their clothes. This was apparently the world's first ever nude psychotherapy marathon session for criminal psychopaths.
Oh my gosh! First,
Yeah,
he
I'm sure.
started something.
Right. But so these naked LSD fueled sessions lasted for like 11-day stretches, and apparently the psychopaths were just like there were no distractions, no television, obviously, no clocks, no calendars, no clothes, and they were forced to have a perpetual discussion at least 100 hours every week of their feelings,
Oh
apparently.
my gosh!
And
That's
when they got
constant. That's every waking moment almost.
right. And so when they got hungry, this is when they would suck the food through the straws that protruded through the walls. And the patients were encouraged to go to their rawest emotional places by screaming and clawing at the walls and confessing fantasies of forbidden sexual longing for one another, even if they were, in the words of an internal Oak Ridge report at the time, in a state of arousal while doing so. Yeah, I know it's so crazy to hear like the traumatic experience of like Steve Smith personally, because a lot of the younger people who had just been their rights had been entirely violated, and basically it's because they had no real parental guardian or caretaker that was really kind of like
Yes,
following up on their well-being, you know?
I think that one thing that is not emphasized, but I see it when what I call the created person, like JD Vance or Jim
Right.
Comey, AOC, Stacey Abrams. They look for you take. I think about the tests that you've taken. I've taken a lot of standardized tests, and just aptitude tests, psych tests. Like, just think of all the tests you've taken as an American growing up here. And especially if you join an institution like
Right.
the army or something, and now corporations are doing them. They're doing psych tests. They assign you a number. You're a 3 or a 5 for sure. Like you cooperate or you're a leader. So they figure out what you have, your intelligence. They figure out what you have to offer,
Right.
and they can recruit you for that thing. But also, I've told people this story before. When I kind of ran away from home a little bit, I dropped out of high school, and but I was just at the end of my junior year. It was a little disruptive, but as the youngest of 9, I'm like not 100% sure my parents noticed for a while. So, but when I was out there, I was waitressing, and somebody, I don't know what the story was, but he told me he wanted me to be a model, and I kept thinking like I'm not tall enough to be a model. So he kept saying like, you want to be a model, whatever. Then he said, well, the studio, whatever, is in Dallas, and this was in Denver. I kind of
Oh
ran
my
away to
God.
Denver. And and I'm literally so stupid and young that
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that sounds like fun, blah, blah, blah. And then I guess I wasn't that stupid. He said, do you have a boyfriend or anybody who like would miss you?
Oh my God.
Kind of like
Holy
that. Like whatever
shit.
he said, I was like, I don't
Red
know.
flag.
Yeah, and I'm dumb as a box of rocks. Like my mother used to say, like, you have no street smarts. You're so smart. And he could take a multiple choice test. You get every question right. And then you can't handle the
That's
streets.
too
I'm like,
funny.
okay, this is true. So, but I did dodge that bullet. But now I know they for sure look for that. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, what was Ghislaine doing, hunting for nubiles, right? While they're sitting there trying
dude,
to convince them that they would become Victoria's Secret models and get right a glimpse at the high life, and then all of a sudden they're seduced into giving their passports to them, and then all of a sudden they get on a plane and they don't get it back when they land.
I'm
Uh-oh.
sure there's a lot of psych stuff goes into that because if you're a young girl,
Hmm.
they were adolescent, they were post-pubescent, like these weren't children.
Yeah.
You can be mentally seduced and then you kind of consent. Like if I had gotten on that plane,
Hmm.
I would have been someone who voluntarily walked on that plane.
Yeah.
And that can play havoc with your own mind.
Yep.
as a victim of that. You can just, and they can say, you've been prostituting. You can't go to the police. Like, I can see how that they use these kind of the intel they get through psych experiments are very useful in how they control individuals, but also then extrapolate to how they really drove young women of that age group insane during COVID and continue to exploit them with TikTok and everything. I mean, it's really,
Oh my God.
no doubt they know exactly what they're doing.
I saw that in that Missouri, what they were saying, the trans genocide of Missouri or whatever, where I saw they were pushing basically just legislation to end the ability for trans or for children to seek gender reassignment surgery, right? And one of the speakers that was specifically urging and like for this bill to be passed was apparently, she was a lesbian, a doctor who had been married to a trans person for like the past 13 years or something, and that through her personal experience of running her private practice, that basically she and the group of individuals within her practice actually had come to find where they would refer to this phenomena as the TikTok phenomena, essentially. I think is what was the term they were utilizing. And it was basically, they were saying that it was a social contagion brought upon these young females specifically, who had been being fed this specific script from this TikTok algorithm, that were coming in and almost verbatim, each of them were citing this script as if it were, their actual, gender identity crisis that they were, in the midst of. And then pursuing gender reassignment surgery. And through their reassignment surgery, she was claiming that through, let's say, an inverted penis turned into a vaginal, right? You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry to get, but that's what's happening. And they're saying that, unfortunately, what is also taking place, which is being very underreported, is that these infections are happening in regard to this from their first sexual experiences. Yes. And so then they come back and they contract these infections that have then actually led inevitably to loss of life.
Oh my gosh.
And so I don't know, it's just absolutely.
Yeah, you shouldn't. Elective surgery like that is already sketchy. To let children decide to be sterilize themselves, like before you even do all that. Are tattoos? Can children go in and get tattoos with that's their consent? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're not supposed to alter your body. And then they lay out this bullshit that if you don't do it at that time, you can never do it. It's that they could never get enough adults to do the kind of experimentation and cultural transformation. They cannot prey on adults. They won't do it. They have to prey on the children who are going through a crisis with the person they trust the most, the parent who loves them. I mean, I remember just having a back and forth with my daughter when we were all under so much stress here, where it was locked down for a year and a half. And she would say, like, you're engaging in bad parenting or whatever. And you could just hear that TikTok speech. And I'm thinking, what I'm doing is such good parenting. Like, I'm not enjoying, trust me, like, this is taking a tremendous amount of time, patience, effort, wisdom, reading books, talking to people. Like, I am helping you. Like, you are nuts. And, she wants a septum ring and like a million. I'm like,
oh gosh,
no, like, you're not doing that. Like, this is my body. I'm like, okay, no. And it's funny because I could just hear the inversion. And the problem here was I would control the screens pretty strictly. And then all of a sudden they're Zooming for school 8 hours a day. And then when they're off, I'm like, no Zoom, you can't do that. You know what I mean? It's out.
Right.
It's the toothpaste is out of the tube. Like, you cannot, then you're really a monster. And
wow, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, you can't, there was nothing you could do. And I'm thinking, okay, these kids are all going to be blind and deaf. That's okay, because they're going to have your glasses, your little, your glasses that have artificial brain eye ear thing, all this stuff. You can see it's real, yet it seems fantastical when you look into the process stuff. even this, like the Kennedy thing, this little pamphlet, the guy talks about the connections and
Oh my
Sirhan, when
God.
I found out, I didn't really know what was going on. When I found out Sirhan spent time in Pasadena, it's like,
The
oh,
OTO Lodge. It was the
yeah, like that.
100%.
Alistair Crowley was here, Jack Parsons. It's the
Yes.
origin of NASA. There's a huge NASA
know.
thing here. It's called JPL, and it's totally looks like nothing. If you go near it, they chase you away. But on certain days, if you look over the hill, it's fucking massive. It's
my God.
massive. And I think they control a giant reservoir which fills up with water and then disappears of water.
Oh my God.
And it's super bright at night. You can kind of see anyway, I don't want to speak out of school because I'm just talking about my observations. It could be totally freaking innocent. But they run the Mars rover from there. And I always want to say, like, I just want to ask, because you meet people who are there, and I want to ask them, like, have you ever been to Devon Island? Have you ever seen pictures of Devon Island, Austin?
It's very much like Mars, huh?
You
literally,
you're saying? Yes, you can overlay. You can be like, wow, what's the
Mars
likelihood that you guys nailed it, by the way? You nailed it. Like, you got the one place on
100%.
Earth that looks, how'd you even know?
One of Von Braun put on his headstone, the firmament revealeth his handiwork, right? 100%. And so it's like, what the fuck is he trying to say? Right? And he had some deathbed confessions, which were very interesting as well.
Come on.
Yeah. And you tied that into the Disclosure Project, right?
Yeah.
And that's another thing. You tie that into the Disclosure Project funded by the Rockefellers. You tie that all the way back to War of the Worlds and the Orson Welles broadcast, which was all psychological operations at the time. That was a mental psychological deception. That was what that was for.
Which was?
They then ran the War of the World broadcast, which was funded by,
that was a Rockefeller thing.
Funded by the
Rockefeller.
The Princeton Radio Project, which was all funded by the Rockefellers, which, inevitably what resulted in that was they studied it based on the psychological reaction as a phenomena. And then they thought, how could we utilize this in the future? And I realized that very much. I think that the UFO, UAP phenomena has always been tied back to psychological operations, and really maybe even a crucial component within this new age esoteric ideological system of control that's being like fulfilling this God hole within so many people. What is this?
Have you seen, do you know Jim Keith? I love Jim Keith.
Yes, I do. Yes.
He's an original conspiracy researcher. He wrote Saucers of the Illuminati.
Yeah.
And this guy goes way down the rabbit hole. Like, he's not afraid of UFOs. That's for shit sure. Right. But his there might be UFOs, but he really lays out the origins of some of these movements, the CIA origins of some of these movements, the cover-ups of some of the most advanced technology. I know people who, my grandfather saw UFOs and he swears by it. Or he did. So I'm not saying they're not true, but they're definitely used for these purposes.
I'll have to pull up at some point. I'll send you this whole and Ryan Christian. I can't remember the journalist that authored the series on The Last American Vagabond right now, but it's called UFOs from PSYOP to Mind Wars or something. It's so good, and it's at least a 3-part series at this point. I think it might have become a part 4 as of now. I'm not quite certain, but either way, it charts a course from the infancy of the clandestine operations that were being conducted in regard to staging the initial really just public perception of the phenomena to begin with. It really kind of inherently originates from intelligence. It really was manufactured. So in my mind, I think it's a very much a larger part of the deceptive framework playing out in modern time that has kind of helped usher us into this current system as it is structured in my mind, because it's allowed so many of us to embrace these misconceptions at face value. And now you have people actually believing that there's some future, right, in some Martian dystopia, which is just ridiculous. When they're worshiping at the feet of these false prophets like Elon Musk, and you look at his grandfather, John Haldeman, Okay, what was he?
Yes,
Oh, well,
the Technology
the
Incorporated.
Technocracy
Technocracy
Incorporated,
Incorporated, Canada again.
a member of the Social Credit Party in Canada,
Yeah,
and believed in a universal basic income. This
unbelievable.
sounds like the exact same framework ideologically that Elon Musk has embraced and attempted to facilitate personally. I don't buy any of it. I think Elon is clearly a manufactured personality of the deep state to begin with.
And he got
The
all his
PayPal
money from
mafia.
the government. That's how they get you money. That's how they get
Yeah.
George Soros money. Look at how they're getting their money. Something unbelievable. He runs 5 companies, all of which are fucking probably came out of In-Q-Tel. You know what I mean? And he's running around town, running every single administration in the government and tweeting his ass off and joking around and doing like live appearances and all of this stuff. I mean, he has one job. He can only have one job. Pick which job it is. Obviously, you can see with your own eyes, his job is to be that actor, to be the face. And I'm actually curious to know who is making the decisions on, like, somebody, there is a technocrat. Like it would have been David Axelrod, like when he controlled Obama. There is somebody saying, go into this administration and cut whatever. There's a team. There's probably 12 people in a room, all white men, by the way, who are, not that I give a care, but I'm just saying, like, they all act like they're, well, I mean, those guys are against DEI, but I'm talking about the guys who are controlling both parties, that they are just the Klaus Schwabs of the world, and or whoever controls him. And they're in there deciding how to revamp the entire government. I mean, this is a massive project that is the turnkey technocracy. The AI has been trained by these people who are getting fired for the past however many years, at least 8 years. I think of this Trump Biden thing as a 12-year plan to turn that key. And I mean, it's a restructuring like McKinsey does. If you've ever worked in a company, I worked in Citibank once. It was a restructuring. It had 90,000 people worldwide. Then it had 70,000, and now it probably has 140,000. But they restructured the entire organization. Some team of guys came in there and said, "This is how you do it." And the dictator, like CEO, whatever, just did it. And that's what they're doing. It's what it looks like they're doing. That's what they're doing. And it's not Elon Musk going in there saying, "Oh my gosh, like, you're ugly, so send me an email of why you're not ugly, and I'm still gonna fire you." Like, that's not what's happening.
It's so childish and naive on its face, but it goes to show, like, the level of, I hate to feel this way. And I'm not trying to label the average individual as, it just seems like they're running a major risk from the vulnerability aspect of not having the proper defense mechanisms in place intellectually to be able to kind of resist the propaganda as it flows. You know what I mean? And as it comes and drops into your lap, you have to be disciplined enough and take the effort and to critically interpret these psyops right, because the propaganda, it's like, again, I covered I think I did 4 parts so far with William Ramsey on Operation Mockingbird, because, man, I had no idea. Just obviously,
Wow, like,
all these other
that
operations,
deep?
they never stopped. Like MK Ultra, Driven Underground, obviously,
Obviously they
plausible
never stopped,
deniability.
but
Yeah, exactly. Creating these cult organizations like The Process in many ways, which fits a lot of this, perfectly in regard to, I just found out the dude, Kerry Thornley, who was apparently, he founded Discordianism, a religion. I found out that this apparently was actually a CIA cutout for plausible deniability, and they were running intelligence operations domestically through this fucking fake religion. And so, again, it's like Jonestown all day long, all over again.
Why don't we unpack that? Like,
okay.
This Kerry Thornley, which was it Eve who wanted us to talk about it? Said so. We're saying he founded Discordianism, and it was a cover. So it was as if people were actually into this shit, and really they were assassins, or what?
I think that
what is Discordianism, and who is Kerry Thornley?
Kerry Thornley. This is the craziest part, because this dude is and he founded Discordianism later on, long after his relationship with Lee Harvey Oswald, which is the craziest thing of all time. It turns out that this is the tie-in to I actually just tweeted about it because Sam Tripoli, obviously he so by the way, we've been doing a show behind the paywall called Whatever This Is with Brad Binkley too, right? So it's us three, like me, Sam, and Brad. So it's been a lot of fun, man. But I basically brought this up whenever we were talking about the JFK files briefly, because it sets the stage perfectly, providing kind of this theme of asymmetric warfare and truth is far stranger than fiction, as they say, and that is what you very much discover within the framework of the occult, using this, really like this layered symbolism and subconscious ideological influence that is truly playing out, even if it's and that was the thing with the ultimate evil that blew me away with the David Berkowitz murders, because it was really, the divine 22, the children of the 22 disciples of hell. We'll get into, because it'll blow your mind. But to stay with Kerry Thornley for a moment. So he meets Lee Harvey Oswald while in the Marines in 1959. Later in the same year, Thornley transferred to Atsugi in Japan, the Air Force Base, where Oswald basically was before he went through the fake defector program and was sent over into the Soviet Union. And in 1962, so before anything happened with JFK, right before, Thornley writes a novel called The Idle Warriors. And this novel is about a disgruntled Marine who defects to the Soviet Union. It's so crazy.
Oh, that's great.
The book is based on Thornley's knowledge of Oswald. And the following year, Thornley just so happened to move to New Orleans. So in 1962, he publishes this book. The following year, he moves to New Orleans, where it was claimed he associated with none other than Guy Bannister, David Ferry, and Clay Shaw, who are all running Oswald, right? Obviously, and you tie back. I mean, just considering David Ferry. Oh, and
Yes.
by the way,
and that's process for sure.
It's processed all day long, and I didn't realize, obviously, like you have like what was it, the Roman Catholic priests, but they were like the black clergy. I forgot what they called themselves. I'll pull it up in a moment, because it's very important. I feel like they were this traveling circus in a way of mind control and hypnotism, and they had these mind control manuals, but they were pedophiles, and they were grooming these kids from the civil
Ferry
air
was
patrol.
a defrocked priest, right?
Yeah, and there's a reason, because they claimed it was because he was gay. I think it's because he was a gay pedophile. You know what I mean? But even though
that there's a difference, and that a lot of the scandal in the Catholic Church, I think, was I think more of it was the preying on young men, not like children. I think the prepubescent thing is
prepubescent is another layer of,
a whole nother fucking level.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm not just like any of it, but I'm just saying, like that's really an abomination of untold. You can't
complete sadism.
I can't even get my mind around that.
No, it's impossible. And I will say, just from overexposing myself to like court documents, various witness accounts, details of like the most sadistic abuse you could ever imagine. Like reading the X dossier for the Dutroux network, I just like cried like a baby. I couldn't even imagine, and Regina Louf, those girls, like, it's so sad, man. So those things, once you realize that, there's a real practice, there's occult practices that are being conducted that under our noses at an aristocratic level in society that, is being very much covered up in the facilitation of the cover up, and they utilize the victims to procure other victims, and then you see, like, Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Somebody asked me the other day, I have great conversations with Uber drivers. First of all, like 99% of them know that 9/11 was an inside job. So like you're
I love it.
already way ahead of the game. And this guy, though, he said, I usually ask him, like, do you believe in God? You can ask them anything. They don't care. So he said, I just can't get my mind around why God would let 12-year-olds get raped.
Mm.
And I did not have a great answer. I mean, my mother said the same thing about my brother dying of AIDS, which she realizes now was AZT poisoning. But I was like, well, God gives us free will. And unfortunately, that's the only way to have free will is if everybody has it and you're at the mercy. But it's pretty horrible to think of a world that allows that. I mean, then you can just say, well, Satan, which is true, but it's still hard to wrap the mind around.
Absolutely. I don't think that anyone who isn't the sociopath can conceptualize this. You know what I mean? Like,
but there are plenty of them, and they get into positions of power. So it's not like they're not rational. They're not able to serve their own interests. They're not able to climb the ladder of power.
Maniacs. Yeah.
And it's actually an advantage probably in climbing the rungs of power.
I would think so. I would very much think so, because you're essentially just a cold-hearted reptilian at that point, right?
And you're bonded to the people who have witnessed this. So you've witnessed each other doing this stuff, and nobody can step out of line. Yeah.
There's so much of it is the initiation aspect of it. Like, I found out the Fort Bragg murders were apparently connected to, apparently some sort of ritualistic. So Jeffrey McDonald's wife, Colette, was actually pregnant at the time, and her and the two daughters, the 5.5-year-old and the 3-year-old, were both brutally murdered in his home. And I think there were at least 4 perpetrators, and they were all tied to, like, Ted. I'm curious to know what.
Yes, I read about this. Yes, I know about this story.
There's a book called Fatal Justice.
He definitely didn't do it. Are we in agreement? Like, there were the woman who died begging to testify.
Helena Stokely.
Yes.
Yeah. And the victims, man, you read through the court documents, the Helena Stokely witnesses, they all like neighbors of the McDonald family, and apparently Jeffrey McDonald, Green Beret doctor at the time, stationed at Fort Bragg, he was considered to be like a golden boy, they would call him, and that he was kind of willing to blow the whistle on a lot of there was apparently a very well established drug trafficking operation going on at the time, which obviously ties perfectly into what became Iran-Contra. And I think that it was happening obviously during Vietnam with the Golden Triangle. And what you have to realize is that it wasn't only Fort Bragg, it was multiple other military bases that were, facilitating this. And then the distribution was so that you had compromised local narcotics officers who were in on this operation, who were tied directly to the military police at the time, who were really facilitating a lot of the sort of like compromising the local narcotics officers who were running these criminal informants. And Helena Stokely was one of those criminal informants, who was not only a criminal informant for the local Fayetteville, North Carolina Police Department, but also a criminal informant for the military police, the MPs on Fort Bragg. And so you have the military investigators who essentially took over the case instantly. And it's so nuts because you have Jeffrey McDonald had been stabbed and like bludgeoned, like he was barely even
I think they wanted to leave him alive because they wanted to torture him because he told them to get out of his clinic, right? Did you?
Oh, that's another thing. He had blew the whistle essentially because there were these someone had overdosed on heroin and been brought to his personal he was also running a private or just like working for a hospital that wasn't too far away, but was like a decent ways away from his Fort Bragg duties. But he was still like this was another option for him to make some money on the side as well. So so he was just pursuing that. He and his wife Colette wanted to buy a farm and really wanted to have because they had bought a Shetland pony for one of both the girls. But yeah, it turns out that this was a fertility death ritual and an initiation for the local chapter of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, and I had no
Oh,
idea. But yeah, it turns
he's
out that
still in jail, by the way.
still in
Now, could
jail.
you
It's like a
think Trump
15
has
year.
this was 55 years ago, the crime. You think Trump has the nerve to pardon this guy?
And man, people are
He
so
did
pissed
not do
at
it.
me. Yeah, people are pissed at me just for even mentioning that this guy could be innocent, which is
Oh,
crazy.
McDonald's. There,
People get
that
mad at
woman
me
who
for
was
saying
there,
that.
they were
I know.
witnesses of her nearby at
I'm
the
telling
bus
you right
stop.
now, I was
Really?
completely convinced through just
Yeah,
the court documents alone, and then
yeah,
understanding that the prosecution, so they had private meetings with Helena Stokely, and they threatened her in
right.
front of. So later on in the 2000s, there was a memorandum that went public of an investigator who was present with the prosecution and Helena Stokely in a private room
Yep.
when he claims they threatened her, saying if she told the truth about what happened at the McDonald house that night, they would fucking prosecute her and
Yep.
send her away to prison forever.
Yep.
That's what they said.
Yeah.
And so
she ended
she's
up
like, she
dying anyway.
exactly. And you, by
Well,
the way,
maybe
she
maybe
blew
that's
the
why.
whistle on the cadaver connection that was being very well, facilitated and distributed through the Fort Bragg and other military bases at that time. And you go and you look this up. I'll send you this PDF of Ted Gunderson's interview with Helena Stokely and I'm
Wow.
curious to know. Yeah, it's the Dr. Jeffrey McDonald investigation. And
Gunderson, maybe sometimes, I don't know, but
I know.
but an interview is an
gonna ask you.
interview.
Yeah, it was an actual interview. You can watch I wanted to use it really bad as a clip I did a 4-hour episode on this. Solo. I did a 4-hour episode, just like I couldn't stop.
Wow.
It was
Oh yeah,
insane.
somebody told me that. Yeah. No, I did know about this, but yeah, if there's a witness who
Mhm.
provides exculpatory evidence who is not
Exactly.
on,
They
like Bill
withheld.
Cosby,
Yeah.
there was a guy who overheard his accuser plotting to extort him. And that's why he had a deal from the prosecutor that he wouldn't be prosecuted, but he could go on the civil case and give the deposition and pay her off to go away. But even in this recent trial, he was not allowed to bring that witness. That's an absolute violation of the Bill of Rights. You can't have that. And to my utter amazement, his court, even though he was in jail for 3 years, an 80-year-old blind man, they did overturn his conviction.
Wow.
But anyway, so anytime there is, I don't care if to me, they are not proven guilty. Right. If there is exculpatory evidence that is not permitted, that they want to introduce, that is not permitted in the case. I mean, you can't accept that, because what if it's you? What if it's you?
Exactly. And I mean, honestly, like it was just fatal justice, right? Like that's really the perfect title for a book in regard to this story, because it really was like just the most insane and extraordinary example of a miscarriage of justice and the withholding of exculpatory evidence from the jury, from any real honest,
like Ross Ulbricht. People say, why do you defend him? I'm like, because there were 2 people who went to jail for malfeasance in investigating his case by the government, and it was not permitted to be brought up in his trial. You cannot allow that.
It's so crazy, man. Like, but yeah, and it was this former deputy U.S. Marshal Jimmy Britt was the one who filed. It was an affidavit, not a memorandum, and it was in 2005 that really kind of created this stunning new development in the McDonald case, and basically he filed this affidavit with the North Carolina Wake County Courthouse on November 3rd, 2005, and he states in this affidavit that he was the witness to a conversation between Helena Stokely and State Prosecutor James Blackburn in Blackburn's office on the 8th floor of the federal courthouse at 310 New Bern Avenue in Raleigh, North Carolina, during the trial of Jeffrey McDonald in 1979. And according to Britt's statement, Blackburn began to interview Helena Stokely, and in the course of that interview, Stokely revealed to Blackburn many things, including details of the McDonald home, such as the rocking horse with the broken spring, only known to crime scene investigators, in order to prove to him that she was there. She told Blackburn that she and others were in McDonald's home on the night of the murders and that they had gone to the McDonald home to get drugs. there's more to that story, because again, it was like the guy who was running this distribution network from Fort Bragg, at least helping as a local chapter member of the process. They called him the Wizard with 2 Z's. Listen, this is so crazy, because there's basically there were all these cult members who, when before Helena Stokely died, she was giving all this information to Ted Gunderson, and Prince Beasley was her original handler as a criminal informant for the local narcotics division in North Carolina. And it turns out that she claims that there were 13 exclusive members of the group, and specifically these numbers matter. And this again falls in with what we talk as far as just with David Berkowitz and those murders, as well as
we should talk about that. Yeah,
we have to.
Church. Yeah,
100%. I know I'm totally off base over here. I've never.
We're good. We have 50 minutes. I want to do cool. 2 hours, and even if we wrap up with that, we have to bring in that Stanford Church murder, because I didn't even know about that with Ultimate Evil. But keep going. This stuff is fascinating. The Jeffrey McDonald stuff, the Stokely stuff. It's so. I mean, these miscarriages of justice are just. That's what should make your blood run cold, because if there was this guy, Donald Soxleben, he was the whistleblower on the second underwear bomber. He prevented that from happening. God. He was shortly there, and he was also on the scene at OKC. He was a bomb specialist. His name is Donald Soxleben. Nobody's ever heard of him, but I just remember reading the article, and he was at OKC, and I think he was so horrified at what happened that he blew the whistle. He did not want another one of these. And by what the New York Times or the Washington Post, wherever I was reading it, a bizarre coincidence, he was arrested for having kiddie porn on his FBI.
Oh my God.
I mean, what a silly guy. Man. Why would he, at work too? Hey, he's like, which laptop should I use for my kiddie porn? Let me go to the office, because I want to view some kiddie porn.
That's so crazy.
It was really, and he pleaded guilty, of course. He's like, yep, you got me.
I'm
like,
you
are you
right
saying
now.
I have to die or not? They're like, you don't have to die. It's like, okay, kiddie porn it is.
Keep your mouth shut. That's crazy.
Yeah. So Soxleben, Sachleben, Donald Soxleben. But yeah,
one more time. I'm sorry.
It's if you're interested, Sachleben. And then there's another guy, unrelated, Nacchio, Nacchio. I think he was the CEO of Quest Communications, and he denied the warrantless wiretaps of the Bush administration, and he went to jail for 4 years for insider trading, and he was not permitted to bring the fact that it was a government witch hunt up in his trial, which it was. They didn't deny it wasn't. They just said, didn't deny it was. They just said, you can't, it's against national security for you to bring out that exculpatory evidence. And I'm saying, just do it behind closed doors. Don't even put it on the record. Don't tell everybody you can't, no pens or pencils in the courtroom, and let's just have it out. Nope, no can do.
That is absolutely insane.
So this is why you have to worry about that. It's that if you do something they don't like, they're going to get you on an unrelated thing. That's not what happened here. I wondered
about Bruce Paddock as well, like Stephen Paddock's brother. Like he gets stopped on child porn right after he's like, this doesn't make sense. My brother would never do this.
Yep.
But also I think that obviously Stephen Paddock was being utilized in the network and just hung out to dry, but
I still don't know about that story. Did you ask that Ian Carroll? So I had seen a woman, I forget her name. Was her name Mindy or something? I don't know. She had all this footage of Vegas that night. And then I think Ian Carroll was like, that was all my footage. I don't know what either of those people, whatever, but the footage is out there, and there were shots being fired everywhere. Like in that pit, people were the trajectory. It was absolutely like on a plane. It wasn't down through to the top. That had like the bullets and everything. They knew. So I don't know what really happened in Vegas, but something really happened. Like I think they actually pushed the false flag thing, the hoax thing, which there have been hoaxes, so that anytime there's something real going down, they can just call it a hoax. So when I heard about Vegas, I was like, it's not true. And this has happened a couple of times. People I know say, well, my friend's sister died, or something like that. And you're like, nah, you sure? It's like, yeah, I'm sure. And then,
There's
so things really do happen. It's not
oh,
Baudrillard. They do happen, but they plant that hoax thing so that you don't know what to believe. Mary Baudrillard.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, meanwhile, they use it as a pretext to pass, more legislation that violates our inherent rights. And that's what the bump stock was the excuse and justification, which was a total
Silly.
lie because it's
Yeah.
clearly a belt fed into what
Oh,
was it?
yeah. It's like going
Yeah,
into
yeah,
Iraq when Saudis,
ridiculous.
are the terrorists, supposedly.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
And
ridiculous.
meanwhile, the floors that were owned, by Ali bin Al Talal and the right, you're like, what is happening? And
Yeah.
then the Saudi purge happens right afterward, and MBS, the
Oh,
footage of
yeah.
MBS being, basically walked through the Tropicana with armed security who are yelling at everyone, get on the fucking ground right now,
So
put your
what
hands up.
really happened? What was the nature of that operation? Do you know?
Oh man, it would take a minute for us to lay that one out because I
But do
honestly
you know?
believe.
You don't have to do it, but do you know the
I
answer?
do believe, I do believe that essentially that Mohammed bin Salman was skipping the natural line of power in as
Yep.
far as in Saudi Arabia, and that the interests aligned perfectly with the assumption with the Trump administration just taking power, and so you see the footage of him posing with MBS directly after this event took place, and I think obviously we have I think there's enough evidence to prove that there were covert helicopters in the area that turned off their transponders as soon as they
Yes.
were
Yes.
hovering over that.
Yep.
So
That is
that's why
true.
people were claiming, witnesses claimed that there were shots being fired from helicopters.
Yep.
And then you also have people on the ground claiming that they were being stalked with men with guns, on the ground level. Then you have shots on the third floor. Then you have shots right on those floors that were owned by. I think there were two armed security groups of that were basically at war in Vegas that night, and that you had a cover up where essentially there was an operation where it was Operation Fast and Furious, and they had staged this gun deal, this arms smuggling operation, where there was a gun deal where Paddock was going to be the patsy because he was sent there to essentially kind of lure them into the trap, and then the firefight could take place. And really, I don't know if it was ever intended to go that far, but essentially, this is why there were witnesses claiming
they shot all
what?
those people, obviously,
for
as a
sure.
diversion. So,
But I'm always wondering, like, is that, oh shit, this went live, now we have to kind of facilitate this cover up in a way that obviously I would imagine would be layered and pre-planned, as far as like
they didn't improv killing those people.
no, that I certainly don't believe, because I don't even think I think Paddock was dead before all those shots were fired, obviously. But I do think that there were three women that were in his room as well. If you understand the Mary Lou Danley connection, who's basically on the FBI CIA payroll, and that was his Filipino girlfriend that he had just wired like hundreds of thousands of dollars to, and just told to go to the Philippines, where they were running Silkway Airlines, which was obviously, it was apparently this flight. This was a known, so this is a Paddock-owned airline, Silkway Airlines, and it was smuggling guns through Operation Fast and Furious, among many other things. And Chicago O'Hare International Airport received this Silkway Airlines, and Stephen Paddock was the individual there to receive the shipment of weapons.
Okay.
And he was tied to this Russian, apparently this Russian mob figure in Vegas, who was they were just using Vegas as a place to launder their money.
What did that have to do with the Saudi guy, Mohammed?
Yeah, so I think that there was an attempted assassination on MBS.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, okay. Because Ali bin Al Talal was wanted to actually, pursue the position, and essentially.
They knew he was going to be there or whatever. Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Well, we have to get back to the McDonald thing, to the process church, to the Stanford thing.
Definitely. Oh, yeah.
So how was the McDonald thing? It seemed to me like her story, Stokely's story, was that they were mad at him for rudely denying their demand for drugs, and they wanted to get him back big time by not only killing his people, but making him stay. I don't know if they meant to frame him, but they meant him to stay alive and suffer for it.
Apparently there were only basically there was man, it's interesting because what you have is kind of, it's an initiatory rite, but it's not only the motivation was definitely
Yeah.
not that they were trying to get him to prescribe them drugs or write a script or whatever, which was the claim of the narrative that
Right.
was being put forward. But apparently there's a deeper connection than that, because of um, so I had mentioned Jeffrey McDonald was working at the hospital where these individuals had brought in a man who had overdosed on heroin. And so a nurse in Jeffrey McDonald's practice, after Jeffrey McDonald saves this guy's life, reports it to the officials, the authorities, which McDonald himself was telling his nurses to do, because he was not turning a blind eye to the very large, just as much heroin that was being trafficked through Fort Bragg at the time. It was very eye-opening to a lot of people on base. The amount of heroin overdoses had essentially skyrocketed in a very short amount of time. And he was connecting this back to what seemed to be essentially he could have been willing to blow the whistle on this very well-established drug trafficking and distribution pipeline.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. It has to
Mhm.
be bigger than I was miffed at this guy, so I
Yeah,
killed his wife and 2 daughters and, pinned
exactly.
it on him. Like, that did seem a little sketchy. However, all of her other details hung together, so she's
Yep.
a very plausible witness, credible witness, because she had all that. But also, I noticed with Berkowitz, he gives a lot of information, but he, like Stokely, will not come out and say
Right.
how far it reaches. I mean, you knew
Isn't
he
that
was
crazy?
hiding something. Like, he would just like you, because I've watched all the Berkowitz interviews over the years,
Mhm.
and when like when his like the throat cut scar is kind of
Right?
fresh,
Yeah.
and he's like, that guy was just trying to make his bones or whatever. And
Mhm.
it's hard to not like laugh. Like, obviously you were being assassinated by somebody high
Exactly.
up, and he's like, but he. I think they respected me because I would never talk.
Yeah.
You
It is
know?
so ridiculous
Yeah,
that
but
that is
there was something he wasn't talking about still to this day,
exactly.
and he says, and there was the implication of
He said
possible
he
substance.
refused to name the names, right, of
Yes.
the cult members, and that was the same thing Helena Stokely told Ted Gunderson, right? And it's very interesting, and once again, I I think you would be very interested to read Fatal Justice, because, and
Okay.
also like one of the co-authors, their description of Ted Gunderson and kind of his personal his personal attachment to the Fort Bragg murders was really his main case coming into as a private investigator for the first time. Like his first kind of, he was um, one of his biggest cases when he first started his private investigator practice as Ted Gunderson was this Jeffrey McDonald murder case. And
Yeah.
it was
Fatal Justice,
very interesting.
Reinvestigating the McDonald's murders by Jerry Allen Potter.
Yep, that's it. Yep. And I think it's very important because through that is where you kind of see that this Prince Beasley, right, the retired Fayetteville, North Carolina police officer who had been running Helena Stokely as a criminal informant from 68 to 72,
Mm,
and
mm.
he told
Right when
Beasley
that happened.
exactly, and oh my God, all right, clearly I'm an emotional person, so it doesn't take a whole lot to bring me
Yeah.
to tears, but I'm sitting
Yeah.
there like reading after these murders took place. He goes straight. He finds out about it in the middle of the night, all right? Early in the morning. He finds out about it. He reads this article, and and the first article was, it was so crazy. It's like, we're Green Beret doctor's family killed by hippie cult. Like that was the original,
Wow.
yeah, headlines. I swear to God,
Wow.
before all of it was covered by the MPs. Like,
Wow.
yes, 100%. That was the official line,
That was the
right off
original
the
initial
bat.
dismissal of charges. The
Yes,
chagrin of Colonel Rock issued a report recommending charges be dismissed, and he
exactly.
believed no truth lay in those charges. The nature of the murders led him to believe the perps were insane or under the influence of drugs. It does not say cult related, but I wouldn't be surprised if I clicked through and he said that too.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely crazy because that's another aspect of it. You know,
Oh yeah, it
it
came from Fatal Vision.
Yep. There you go.
Oh, Fatal
And by the
Vision.
way,
What's
Fatal
Fatal
Vision.
Vision?
So Fatal Justice is the book that responds to the
Fatal
cover
Vision?
up, which is Fatal Vision, because Fatal Vision, you look at how,
Wow.
oh my God, Monica, when you
Awesome.
find out that through basically this this author of Fatal Vision had essentially been entirely compromised, right? And he had been, first of all, he had been attached to Jeffrey McDonald originally to attempt to provide him with a defense, right? He was going to help him with his defense. And so Jeffrey McDonald's willingly giving him all this information for him to author this book that was supposed to actually help with you know, his as far as just like the presentation and perception of his innocence, right? But that very much
Yes, that's how they do it. Yeah.
exactly. And so it takes a turn, right, at a certain point.
Yeah. Like a
And
Netflix documentary.
exactly. And you start to discover that apparently there was the publication, like they had essentially, they had said that they couldn't sell this book with Jeffrey McDonald being innocent, right? And because he had essentially, like, during the course of this,
Oh, yeah.
the book being cultivated and put together,
Yeah.
essentially
He was convicted, right?
he was convicted, and so they said we can't fucking sell this book with
That's
that
awful.
framework, right? With that narrative.
Jeez.
And so this is how Fatal Vision was compromised to sell copies. Listen to this story. Before visiting Gunderson's office, this is Jeffrey Potter, right? Who wrote Fatal Justice. I reread Joe McGinnis's book, Fatal Vision, and I dipped into old newspaper reports. And what I found there made me feel as though Ted Gunderson were either a damn fool or he really knew something no one else did. Joe McGinnis's book, Fatal Vision, fascinated me. I respected the author's ability to turn a phrase, but even more impressive, under McGinnis's sharp pen, the dark character of MacDonald took brilliant and frightening shape. John Steinbeck once told his editor that today he was going to sit down and create Kathy in East of Eden, and that she would be a monster. Such people do exist, Steinbeck insisted. McGinnis, too, fashioned his monster. But instead of building the character out of whole cloth, as Steinbeck had done, it appeared that McGinnis simply stepped back and let the reader listen to MacDonald's own words from tapes he had made for McGinnis from prison. In this way, the author cleverly appeared to allow a villainous MacDonald to create himself, and MacDonald seemed to rise out of the pages as the very specter of evil incarnate. Whether or not he actually had murdered his family, I found I did not like this Jekyll and Hyde Dr. MacDonald, and well into my reading, I decided Ted Gunderson had to be unsound, completely mistaken, or otherwise motivated. But as I read McGinnis's book, something gnawed at the edges of my memory. It was the vague recollection of a tale Dr. Joel Norris had related a few months earlier when he and I were crossing the East River in New York on the aerial gondola from Roosevelt Island to Manhattan. I had been watching tugboats working the river barges and didn't have any reason to be interested in Joe McGinnis. But Dr. Joel Norris was talking at the time about having the same literary agent as Joe McGinnis. Remembering this, I put down Fatal Vision and phoned Joel. I asked him to recount the story he had told me while we crossed the river in New York City earlier in the year. Sure, he said. McGinnis and I both used Sterling Lord. But you were telling me something about the MacDonald book. Oh, yes, Joel said in a soft and comfy Georgia accent. At this party, Sterling was bragging that he made Fatal Vision. What do you mean, made? I asked. Joe's book was in trouble, Joel said. McGinnis had signed with the publisher, and they were going to call the book Acid and Rain. Because guess what? They were chanting that night when Helena Stokely went in there, acid is groovy, kill the pigs, over and over again. So much like the Manson murders, right? Killing of a pregnant woman, fertility death ritual, tied to the Process Church local chapter.
And the way McDonald can be presented as an unsympathetic character, I would say, first of all, he was a prickly guy, right? He was a Green Beret. He's not taking shit from anyone. And
Exactly.
10 years into this ordeal, imagine how cynical you would be
Oh my God.
by then. And they're like, after he got out of jail, like the first time he had a girlfriend, it's like, I'm fucking sure this
It was so
guy.
sad listening to his statements. I listened to a bunch of his interviews
Yeah.
as the years went on as well. And you're exactly right. It
Yeah.
was like he was just desperately trying to just sort of desperately make some sort of life out of this, what he had left. And he's like, my God, can I escape this in any way? As much as it
Yeah. And
obviously affected him. Yeah.
And as you get more and more demoralized, you care less and less about the niceties of how people expect you. You'd have to be on all the time. And he's just, I mean, I can just imagine a Green Beret whose family just got murdered and he got stabbed. Like, I'm not sure he's going to affect the pose that you expect him to. And as years go by, so yeah, I could see how just a cursorily curated interview session with him could make you jump to any kind of conclusion, easily manipulate the listener.
Oh, absolutely.
So but yeah, go ahead, finish what you're saying, and then I have a question for you.
Awesome. But yeah, I just it, as far as that point is concerned, though, it is absolutely tragic, but also it's it's kind of it's a little bit I don't know, it's not really the best way to approach, I think, interpreting his kind of emotional reaction to it, because there's a prosecutor who was a part of the original prosecution that the judge had actually, when the judge ruled in his favor in the military tribunal, basically, one of the members of the prosecution went into private practice directly after this and attempted to make their entire career on Jeffrey McDonald.
Yeah.
And that was what it was about, I think, was that the fix was in because come to find out, there's a much more sinister process connection to Jeffrey McDonald's defense team that I was unaware of. You have an individual named John Markham that directly ties in. He was a member of the Process Church in Boston, Massachusetts, and he was a part of Jeffrey McDonald's defense team who basically fucked him over.
Yeah, right. Did.
And another one of his members of his defense team was assassinated as well in Philadelphia outside of a federal building in his car, because guess what happened to him? He had been implicated as a member of a nationwide domestic drug trafficking operation through the military bases. It's like, holy shit.
Wow.
So potentially they were just infiltrating his defense team and pulling the rug.
Which means there's a lot of them out there if they're that close. So the Process Church, you talked about fertility rituals. You talked about drug dealing. It's nationwide. I've heard you talk about like the 3 different gods you're allowed to pick from: Jehovah, Lucifer, Satan. So can you say what is the Process Church? When not everybody's heard of it. Right. Can you take time to flesh it out if you want. So I want to hear about what is the Process Church, and then how does it pull in the different esoteric rituals, but also like these actual events.
Yeah. No, I think that the dates of, well, I'll get into what
is the Process Church?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what is it?
Okay. So first of all, the Process Church, we can start with just kind of the bare bones, because it is important just to understand the direct connection to Scientology as well. So the Process Church was really formed in the UK by Mary Ann McLean and Robert de Grimston, which they are the founders, but they were members of the Scientology chapter at the time, and personally knew L. Ron Hubbard,
who I believe in Pasadena.
Yeah.
I think they made a purchase this year. Crawley did, and so did L. Ron Hubbard, of course. Yeah. Exactly.
And now I believe that now you look at like the Order of Nine Angles and things of that nature, and you tie in, you have direct connections to Michael Aquino, Aleister Crowley, obviously. And so you have this military intelligence thread that weaves throughout, these various organizations that all seem to align perfectly with one, their what they're attempting to achieve, the underlying agenda at play, but also they seem to possess this very similar ideology and philosophy that dabbles in this occult framework that really embodies what a lot of Aleister Crowley's beliefs as well, obviously. And so that is where you kind of have this not only sex magic, but blood rituals that are being conducted. And I think that, first of all, these practices were because essentially the process is described as this neo-Gnostic theological organization, and they obviously the original founding members met as members of the Church of Scientology in the 60s, and of
Really?
course,
Must have been right after it was founded.
yeah, yeah, it
Wow.
was because it was in the early 60s as well, and so that was another reason why I think that there's a direct tie-in with intelligence, because I think L. Ron Hubbard was an intelligence asset, if not an agent in general, because I believe Aleister Crowley is connected, 100% been outed as an MI6 or an
Yeah.
MI5 operative. So it's like dealing
MI6
in
it would be. You
okay.
think he
Well,
was
I thought it
MI5?
was MI5 at the time. I
I
don't
think
remember.
MI5 is the internal one and MI6 is the
Okay.
external
Okay.
one, but it
Okay.
doesn't mean that he wasn't in one or the other.
Yeah, I can't remember, but definitely he was I think, directly involved with intelligence, and I think that's where a lot of these esoteric occult ideologies
Wow.
they kind of stem from. I understand there's a neo-pagan historical context to a lot of this, right? Because again, like studying the OTS, the Order of the Solar Temple, it's another kind of, but it's like a Neo-Templar organization, and people don't realize there was like this moment of this Templar Renaissance that occurred, and I think a lot of these ideas, like the Rosicrucian Order, and so many of these ideologies overlap. They're overlapping, and so these organizations are truly just offshoots of each other in many ways that may embrace different aspects and prioritize different ideas within their philosophy, but they still inevitably sort of pursue the same kind of esoteric principles.
Do you
So
think they, like Aleister Crowley, for example, believed, called himself the Great Beast or something like that?
mm,
You think this is a big question I have always about this stuff. Do you think the people at the top, and you even look at Bohemian Grove and stuff, do you think the people at the top believe these rituals have other dimensional power, or do they believe because they have power? They definitely have power. You could just
yeah,
they have psychological power over the people that you're superior in that organization. And the underlings, of course, are doing it for their power. At what level do people believe they are summoning interdimensional power, and at what level do they know or believe that they're just getting earthly power,
right. I
in your opinion?
honestly, I think you know, I think at the more the leadership level, it inevitably becomes a if not inherently from the beginning, from the outset, it almost seems as if it's really more of a controlling mechanism in many
Yeah.
ways. Although I do believe that there's legitimate, as far as the individuals do believe in a lot of this, as far as just I do think that there is certainly like members of the leadership that do actually practice this and wholeheartedly believe in the
Yeah.
ideology, but it's still like it's hard to kind of gauge at the individual level. Well, I mean, at the group level, more so, because individually they kind of practice these things differently. So it's like, I don't know, whenever I look at it matters, I think, the level of commitment to, if they're actually pursuing like targeted assassinations, they're legitimately convincing the members that they are like committing the ultimate sacrifice. In Maury Terry's book, for example, with David
Yeah.
Berkowitz and the Divine 22 Disciples of
They're
Hell,
doing it. Yeah, for sure.
they're doing it on
Oh,
behalf of this
yeah.
overarching organization, but it's almost as if they've been theologically convinced that, you know, um,
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
Berkowitz makes you think that he was conjuring the devil, and now
Oh yeah.
he's son of hope. Like, I believe his Christian conversion for sure.
Oh,
Like,
he
I think
mentioned
he's
Moloch too.
just walking around with like talismans of crosses and the
Oh yeah.
Bible and stuff just to fucking protect himself because he saw that get real. So
Oh, when
it does seem like, I mean, why would you worship the devil if you I don't know. I feel like they do believe it's real, and it kind of feels like it's real because it feels like
Mhm.
there's real, uh, real evil in the world.
Oh,
So,
absolutely.
and how does that? So, I was always wondering about the connection. Berkowitz doesn't point to it. Charles Manson does kind of have
Mhm.
an overt connection to the process church.
Oh,
And
yeah.
can you draw that?
Absolutely.
Will
Yeah,
you
so
think that's true?
Manson,
Yeah.
yeah, I think he had direct connection to them when he was at his time, near the Haight-Ashbury on Cole Street, when he was living on Cole Street, because the
Right near
process
Jolly
church.
West's clinic.
Exactly. So he's not only, going into Jolly West Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic, but he's also going to the Process Church local chapter and receiving their ideological influence at the time, which I wasn't aware of until reading through. Ed Sanders does a great job connecting these things as well, with Sirhan too, which is very interesting. But Charles Manson, he was exposed to these practices of the Renegade OTO Lodge that we had both mentioned earlier, and basically the process had this huge influence on him, where Manson was associated with Robert de Grimston, right? And in fact, they used the same alias, Robert Moore.
Oh, yeah. I think
And
I
so,
heard you talk about
oh yeah,
that.
during the Tate and LaBianca trial, the prosecutor even asked Manson if he knew Moore, and Charlie responded, "You're looking at him. Moore and I are one and the same."
Right.
Leading up to the Tate LaBianca murder, Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski had been in Rome with Hollywood manager and owner of the infamous Cielo Drive house, Rudy Altobelli. And according to official records from the IRS, they were also in Rome
Yeah.
at the very same time as one Robert de Grimston. Now, it turns out I had read something else earlier. This blows me away because, my God, once you start to kind of realize
Yeah.
that
The Roman Polanski thing, his pregnant wife, she was in that movie, like wife of
Rosemary's Baby as
Satan.
well.
No, that was Mia Farrow. Was Sharon
Okay,
Tate
you're right.
in?
No, but I
No,
forgot
she was
to.
in something called like the wife of Satan or something. I'll find it.
Right. Yeah,
Really
I'm
messed up. And it was a Kenneth Anger related film, I think.
yes, you're totally right. Yeah, so not only that, there's all these New Orleans connections to the process, which is totally
Ooh,
crazy,
Eye of
right?
the Devil,
I
the
the Devil.
climax in mind-chilling terror, 1966. Yikes! Fuck.
That is so nuts because
I mean, it doesn't get more obvious than that, and it doesn't all come from that. You know what I mean? You'd say, well,
yeah,
people just say it was satanic because she was in that movie. Like, I don't think so. And the fact that
mm,
Roman Polanski wasn't there, and I mean, to murder, she was super pregnant. I mean, that's like
absolutely.
crazy. You have to be really, really sick to do that.
100%. And the LAPD, they discovered these videotapes that apparently Roman Polanski had filmed himself of her being gang raped and things like that, where she was absolutely
Oh,
like,
yeah.
there were whistleblowers, so people inevitably died who were making those claims,
Yeah.
and but when you see like this the Sharon Tate connection with Sirhan made by Ed Sanders, like that's pretty crazy to me because it kind of plays into exactly what we're just saying about really it uses this FBI report with this that provided this information linking Sirhan with the English Satanists, though with virtually all of the information blacked out. It was received by the Yonkers Police Department during the Son of Sam investigation, right? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think that's where I discovered it. It was reading
So,
Maury Carey's book. It's like
right?
and it's the kind of thing, it's so surprising when you hear it that it's easy to forget. You're just
Hmm.
like, "Wait, did I Sirhan was like related to this." I think he seemed maybe like he was simple or hypnotized. Like, I don't actually think of him
Oh,
as Satan's handmaiden or
right.
whatever.
He apparently did have personal friends. Like he talked about the being affiliated with the London chapter of the process,
Yep,
and had a personal friend who was the chef at the Ambassador Hotel.
right.
And yeah, he apparently went and visited him the day prior to RFK's assassination, which was very interesting. But obviously, I think that Elaine Neal, I think was her name, the girl in the polka dot dress, and
Yep.
her husband was a CIA guy or her ex-husband was CIA, and she was basically an asset affiliated with them at the time, that's why everybody saw this girl with the polka dot dress, and she basically she was applying. So they have multiple things when they trigger a hypnotic trance in someone who is very suggestible over time and have been in this suggestible state many different times. And of course, he himself said that he saw targets in his eyes and thought he was at the shooting range and went into convulsions, basically, where he couldn't stop pulling an imaginary trigger even after he was pulled to the ground. So crazy.
Wow. Where did you get that little tidbit?
So
that's just an eyewitness testimony, or did it come up
definitely
in one of the
eyewitness
police
testimony. I covered it in the RFK assassination episode, but I know Lisa Peace. She did A Lie Too Big to Fail is a really good book, and she claims that RFK, and I'm among the same belief, that she claims that RFK, or that Sirhan, when he was in the pantry, he was firing blanks as well. Because Thane Eugene Cesar, it all makes all the sense, because why would you be firing in the direction of the hitman who's actually going to commit the assassination?
Yeah. You can't do that. It's too uncertain.
100%. So we have to control this environment while creating this massive distraction.
And, it sounds like when you talk like this, one who doesn't accept any idea of conspiracies or whatever would say that you're just like complicating this, making it up. It was just, what you see is what you get. And my answer is, it's not that easy to kill protected people who are running for president, whose brother is just killed. This actually happened. And you need to give me an explanation. Maybe that makes you look for conspiracies, but there's obviously a conspiracy, because some guy didn't just run in the kitchen and get that shot off in a frenzied mess across the room, pull off many shots that went in the right direction. Nobody else got hit. Like, it's that the original story didn't happen. So tell me what did happen. Here's a plausible explanation that's supported by eyewitness testimony. Absolutely. I'm going with that until you get me something better. But same thing with 9/11. It happened, and Middle
100%.
Easterners did it. So
why do
you say it can only be the one and not the other?
Hey, Howard Stern said it was dancing Palestinians. Okay. Did you ever hear that?
No, I never heard that.
He straight up in the moment tried to justify and explain away the dancing Israelis by claiming they were Palestinian, which is just totally insane. But no, to that point though, why did 25 people witness this woman in the polka dot dress? 13 of the 25 saw her with Sirhan in the pantry moments before the shooting started. By the way,
she said we did it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. As they're running out with the man in the golden sweater. It's crazy. And 19-year-old Vincent DePiro was the waiter who who at the hotel said in his statement, "When I first saw him, there was a girl behind him too. He described her as shapely, between the ages of 20 and 25, and wearing a polka dot dress."
No way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An elderly couple. They were interviewed by Sergeant Paul Sharaga, and they told him that they were on the embassy room balcony when a young couple, early 20s, came running from the direction of the embassy room shouting, "We shot him! We shot him!" George Green, another witness, he says he saw a girl in a polka dot dress flee the scene with a man after the shooting. Sandra Serrano, this was an interesting one because she was the one who was like basically berated, and under a lie detector test, like they essentially forced her to change her statement. And she had the most detailed eyewitness account. She said it was a very hot night, so she had stepped out onto an external staircase around 11:30 p.m. to get some air. Around 5 minutes later, she saw one woman and two young men walking up the stairs toward her. She even noticed that one of the men, assumed to be Sirhan, needed a haircut. The other man was in a gold sweater, and the woman was wearing a white dress with black polka dots. They passed her and went into the embassy room, and Sandra quickly forgot them. Maybe 30 minutes later, the girl in the polka dot dress rushed back to the staircase, basically stepping onto Sandra, who told the detectives the woman said, "We've shot him. We've shot him." Sandra responded, "Who did you shoot?" And the woman said, "We shot Senator Kennedy." And she came running down the stairs, and the boy in the gold sweater came running down after her. Sirhan, of course, had been very cooperative leading up to his trial in 1969. He claimed to have no memory at all whatsoever of anything happening, a genuine sense of amnesia that no one could understand. And then this doctor named Bernard Diamond, expert in psychology, law, and criminology, he's brought in to put Sirhan under a hypnotic trance in order to have him relive the event under hypnosis. Not only
Interesting.
did the prosecution do this, so did the defense. So strange. And they essentially lead the witness. He's like, the gun's in your hand, Sirhan. You want to kill RFK? What? It's like so nuts. And so this according to Tim Tate and Brad Johnson, right? These journalists who basically ran a report on the actual verbiage being used in the moment that Dr. Bernard Diamond put him in this hypnotic trance. And they ask him, right, the professor, who was with you when you shot him? And he just writes on a piece of paper, girl, the girl, the girl. And then his only other recollection was of being choked by someone on a table in the pantry. This had indeed taken place. One of the men escorting Kennedy had grabbed him in a headlock to try and stop him pumping out more bullets. But Sirhan couldn't recall shooting the senator. He couldn't even remember writing anything about wanting to kill him, right? Because the notebook, RFK must die, RFK
over and
must
over
die.
and over again. Yeah.
Programming.
Yeah, programmed to kill. That actually was coined by Berkowitz.
Oh yeah,
I didn't know that. When I was listening to it, I don't know if you know Scott and William, the History Homos.
Yeah.
They're so funny. So I was on their show talking about this, and I played that clip, and they're like, "Yeah, that's where it came from." I didn't know that. I thought it was McGowan, but it wasn't.
Right. And it is so crazy. And you hear that it just resurfaces so often. James Holmes, I was programmed to kill. Like, my God, how can you do this? Tied in with his dad and Adam Lance's dad being in the LIBOR scandal.
That
You're
one.
just like, what are we talking about here? But
so okay, you've got so is the Process Church, because there's a lot of different entities, and the way you talked about it was like the Jehovah thing, the Lucifer thing, the Satan thing, and I like the way you put it, like the Jehovah thing, or the kind of I'm going to say control freak elements, like you're saying the neat and clean. The Luciferians are do what thou wilt, and the Satanists are the mutilators, the real sickos. So there's the Process Church, but there are so many other entities that seem to push occult stuff, or if you dig in, you're going to find that occult stuff. Are there arms? Is the Process the assassin arm? Is it the killer thing? It's the Satan one, not the Luciferian one? Or how do you
seems like the managing organization of the overall philosophy of how the offshoots of the Process really conduct themselves. So the Process, they kind of show themselves in the process, in almost like the facilitation of the cover up. Because you see, like the individual Process members show up during the Manson trial, right? And they're talking to Bugliosi. It's so strange. Like these two members of I know Bugliosi's a piece of shit, but I'm just,
I have his book, but like I have a whole Kennedy shelf over there, and his book is like I put it behind where you can't even see it. It's so huge though; it's like hard to hide it.
Oh my gosh, I just like. I can't stand him, but I also think that at least this was a really important
tons of it's true, of course.
Oh yeah,
they have to put the truth. That's why it's so hard to
limited hangouts, right?
So
it's what you have to do.
So he was talking to these people, and what were they saying?
Yes, so basically 5 days after the murder of Sharon Tate, right, the Rome chapter of the Process would call a Council of Masters meeting, swiftly deciding to close down the Rome chapter. Allegedly returning to England, where they would subsequently publish the Fear and Death issues of the Process magazine, opening up a chapter in Paris. So de Grimston was also associated with Ron Stark. This guy, a CIA agent who had just so happened to supply LSD to almost all of the youth in America during the late 1960s, including the new version of the compound, the orange sunshine acid, which was supplied to the Altamont Festival, where they all went fucking crazy. People were dying.
SNL had a fake Jimmy Carter. Do you ever see that skit of Dan Aykroyd being Jimmy Carter, saying like, "Johnny, you've taken some orange sunshine. Like, it's going to be okay. Do you have a beer?" And I've actually used that method. I was with somebody who took too much acid after that, and
is
I like
hilarious.
use that. Works great, actually. Just find your, whatever is Allman Brothers to you. Get
Right.
yourself a beer. But yeah, it was Orange Sunshine. Keep going.
Man, it's just like this Ronald Stark guy. He's connected back to Mama Cass, and so this all draws into Laurel Canyon. I didn't realize that what was her name? Something Folger. Abigail Folger. She's completely directly tied into this network. She knew Manson, and Manson 2 was the other guy. They called him Manson 2, Bill Metzger, who everybody thinks is the
is that
Zodiac
like Doris
killer.
Day's son?
No, I can't. No,
Oh
this
yeah,
one. No,
Terry
that
Melcher.
one.
Terry Melcher.
Yeah. They were in the Golden Penetrators together with that's what they called themselves. The Golden
They like
Penetrators.
blondes, I assume.
It's so crazy.
I'm assuming.
Right.
Tate's father was in Rome, Eve says.
Yeah. No, man, that's so crazy because let me finish this final point on the just as far as like this connection to members of the process meeting with Bugliosi's prosecution team, and then I'll point that out as well because it is totally nuts. Yeah, it's all Gladio, man. That's what I'm beginning to believe. Like I'm starting to think that, and you read Paul Williams' book, The Unholy Alliance, and you begin to believe that potentially Gladio, that the CIA was it was founded. The timing of it all is so very strange. The Vatican Bank, the CIA, being essentially founded off of course, the back of the OSS, but and there was another organization that was like in between the two of before the CIA was developed. But it almost seems as if the CIA was sort of developed to manage the Gladio networks that were very much in play.
Oh, that sounds right. Yeah.
It feels that way, especially you connect it directly to these black budget money laundering operations through the Vatican Bank and Le Cercle and, all these various, P2 as well. And a lot of different fraternal organizations of powerful influence, obviously. But yeah, I am very much under this impression that, again, Wackenhut, right? We talked about it before. They pop up in all these various Gladio countries.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Wackenhut, where they were using the Cabochon Indian reservations to do stuff that was against federal law. Really screwed up stuff out of that Danny Castellara book. Wow.
And then it turns into G4S Solutions, and we have Omar Mateen directly connected right before he commits the
Pulse
shooting.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is so crazy because
I didn't know about that.
Oh yeah, and Sadiq Mateen, his father was a CIA asset.
Yeah,
obviously.
I mean, there's pictures of him in the Oval Office, which you wonder, like, why are there pictures like that? Why are there pictures of Al Baghdadi and John McCain? It's like because those are the pictures that get the doors to open. Those are passports.
Yeah, 100%. And meanwhile he's pictured at a Hillary Clinton rally right after the event, in the strategic spot behind her where he would be televised. And then he's even given a local, they had him give a local news report, right? As far as like they're interviewing him after this political event, campaign event. And he's holding a sign in support of Hillary Clinton, opposing Donald Trump and talking about how Donald Trump is this threat. It's very interesting.
Oh, that's, a big part of what people like. I think that what got Donald Trump elected the first time was that Jeff Zucker, who ran him as the CEO for The Apprentice, taught him how to act and all that. He was the head of CNN at the time, and Trump won without spending a single dollar. Like, I think there's something like mystical about that too. They want you to know they did not buy. They did not buy him. He won without spending a single dollar in that first campaign. It's the craziest thing. People don't remember that.
Absolutely insane.
And CNN was the one, and I think CNN got him elected by saying there's only one Republican we're afraid of. And that was it. That's what I think.
You go back to what was it? Resorts International?
Yes.
Like, honestly, I'm at this point, I'm beginning to believe, like, have you read Michael Collins Piper, The New Jerusalem, Zionist Power in America? Because that seemed to tie in a lot of different obviously the David Rockefeller connection and the Baron Edmund de Rothschild connection to essentially bailing out Trump and saying he was there was a
they did
Rupert
that.
Murdoch also, right? He made a statement, Rupert Murdoch, saying that Trump was more valuable to us alive than dead, meaning his branding, I think, is what they were truly referring to as far as when they bailed him out.
They did bail him out. It was the Commerce Secretary, that guy who became Commerce Secretary, was the head of the Rothschild thing that bailed him out. And Giuliani, so you think Giuliani, if you come from New York, supposedly he ran the mob out of New York, but you know what he actually did is that he ran the Italian mob out of New York.
So funny.
So that the Russian mob could come in. So he's kind of a race traitor. And that, I think, that Resorts International, everything, that's what got Trump. So I think of this about Elon Musk, about Trump's father, about Trump himself, about George Soros. All these people got rich intentionally, or either intentionally or not. I don't know. Like with Trump, it seemed to be in the family. But for him to get casinos, which he ran all of these things into the ground, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, at every opportunity, he ran shit into the ground. But for him to have mob connections and be able to run a casino was not allowed. So he had to turn a blind eye. And a casino is a highly insulated business. It is not open to competition, or the odds would be much better. Like the mob running numbers, they will give you better odds. So I mean, I guess they are also controlled, don't have too much competition, but and like his dad made money building the projects with congressional funding. It's a way to get a leg up. Elon Musk, the subsidies, George Soros was front running the pound. It's like, well, what if somebody just told him where it was going to go?
Right.
And they do it. I don't think Trump did it to execute a political ideology. George Soros openly states that. Peter Thiel has a similar pattern where he was a philosophy major. Mark Zuckerberg was a classics major. And I always think those guys, they memorize a lot. They're going to be good face jobs for you. They're going to be good at saying what you want them to say out in the world, especially if they're a little bit stiff in their delivery. You don't have to super act, although Elon Musk is obviously a fantastic actor.
Right.
But yeah,
where's my Roy Cohn?
Yeah. Well, I've got Roy
Jewish
Cohn
mob too, right? So, at least in my mind, that's also the Jewish mob that he's representing in many ways. And from what I heard,
well, the Russian mob, I think, is a Jewish mob.
Well, there you go. There you go. It's the kosher mob is what like
it's Brighton Beach and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And by the way, there's a direct connection with Roy Cohn and David Berkowitz claiming that the Process Church was supplying children to fucking blackmail parties at Roy Cohn's residence.
Yeah, someone told me to ask you about that. So
am I allowed to go to the bathroom really quickly and be right back?
Yeah, me too. You guys want to wait? But we can't go on forever because my son's going to get home from school.
Okay. You just
let's
tell
run
me
to the
when
bathroom real quick.
Okay.
You guys keep you guys can talk, but we have like 59 seconds.
I'll be right back.
Arturo. So how long was that? Was it 59 seconds? I don't know. All right. So What? Thank you for waiting. That was 59. I think I made it. I think I did make it. We weren't actually intending to do this live. I accidentally set it up as a live stream. So we were going
Okay, we'll
to,
do it
anyways.
live, Monica.
So you guys are like in a special, the people who noticed
Damn, you
are in like
won.
a special
That's so funny.
preview.
That's hilarious. Yeah, so that person in the chat asked me earlier, I can't remember who it was. They asked me earlier to make that connection as far as Sharon Tate and the process, just real briefly, and then I'll go back to Roy Cohn, then you can kick me out of here whenever you want. So pretty much.
Well, we have to wrap it up just because we've got stuff to do, but we can continue it next time.
Yeah, I would love to, honestly. We have so much more to talk about, and
totally.
We
probably need to pick fewer than 10 topics for the next one. We could probably just pick one. But exactly. I mean, I didn't even see Jeffrey McDonald's coming. Like, that was really, really out there. But that's such a fascinating story. Okay, so finish your thing about finish whatever you got to finish.
So basically, this is so crazy, and Ed Sanders also is responsible, at least partially, for making this connection. Was that essentially, there were some cellmates that say that Manson planned, obviously he had met members of the process in prison, which I found interesting. And of course, if you know the story of Danny Trejo saying that he missed his calling, and that as far as Manson did, and that when he met Charles Manson in lockup in LA County, that he put him and his buddies through a hypnotic trance. And that he made them feel as if they had just taken a huge dose of heroin, because they were all heroin addicts.
Wow.
Yes. And he said he missed his calling. That guy should be a professional hypnotist.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a handy trick. I've seen heroin addicts trying to kick the habit, and their vitamin sweats, and they are clawing at the door. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
just
that's
nice. That was so crazy to hear.
Why can't they use their sick fascination with manipulating psyches for good?
Right, exactly.
It's because having junkies around is important to them. They need the junkies around. They can't not have the junkies around. So
right, and of course, Manson wasn't even taking half the dose. Most of it he wouldn't even take at all, and he would just kind of usher them through their trips while he would give them like heroic doses.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, that's like Bill Cosby. I mean, I'm not saying Bill Cosby's a good guy. I'm saying he didn't even drink. He had Quaaludes, and the difference is people were taking them voluntarily. They weren't roofies, but he knew he was keeping his wits about him. And they, and that was his advantage.
Right. Yeah. Well, it looks like apparently you have this interesting connection as far as Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate with this process church, obviously with Ed Sanders claiming that, really they kind of arrived in the area at the same time, which is another thing that I found interesting about like tracking the process, because Detective James Rothstein has done a lot of really great work on this. He's a former New York police detective who was really tasked with investigating child sex trafficking and child pornography as well at the time. And he had a criminal informant who introduced him to, first of all, he tipped him off to Untermeyer Park and what he claimed were occult rituals being held at Untermeyer that were involving.
That's undeniable. That thing was built.
The Devil's Cave, right? The Devil's Cave was one of the key locations.
Still there. And it
got filled in apparently recently, like not too long ago. It was filled in, and that makes a lot of sense because of you look at pictures of that whenever the Son of Sam murders were like at least being staged. It's like you get pictures of the Devil's Cave in Untermeyer with upside down crosses and all this crazy symbology and occult ritual shrines. But what he inevitably found off this tip from his criminal informant was a mass grave of Alsatian German Shepherd dogs, right? Which that alone, very strange, and seems to perfectly tie in with this occult ideology that mirrors the Nazi occult. which I found interesting as well, because of obviously the Tool Society implication, but they had everyone surrounding, right, as far as the SS, right, they're all like really pretty much Jewish occultists, which is hilarious, right? Like in many ways, which is kind of ridiculous. But once you kind of come to find that there's so much, as in like the Process magazine, for example, there's so much symbolism in terms of even the Process symbol itself is a swastika. Technically, it's like a strange version of a swastika if you look at it. The black Process symbol, it's very much a swastika.
Oh yes, I saw that in one of your thumbnails.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to look twice to see if it was yeah.
It's straight up crazy. And of course, consider the implication of the power with these neo-pagan runes, which comes up so very often with a lot of this in the occult framework, but practicing the ideology, the ritualistic nature of the power that is granted by the ancient rune. I didn't understand this, and until I really started studying the Delphi murders. That would be a fun one to talk about one day.
Oh, let's do that. Let's do that next.
That will blow you away. And it's recent, right? Like, which is totally insane, because it seems like Delphi, Indiana, first of all, occult, there's occult connotations inherently with the name itself, the Oracle at Delphi. That alone is occult in nature. So there's symbolism just with that. And so then you have these I forget what was the name of the local group, this neo-pagan white supremacist organization called the Vinlanders. That was it. And so they are called the Vinlanders. And I believe that we have I actually legitimately named them, who I believe the perpetrators were, who killed the two girls and organized their bodies in a specific ritualistic pattern that really symbolized Odin hanging from World Tree. And yes, like the way their bodies were positioned, it was an occult ritual, like symbolically and as well. And so you have this ancient rune, Ansuts, which is carved into the tree. And you have, they're in a prayer positioned strategically at the base of the tree. But
you don't think this guy did it? You don't think the guy went to jail for it?
Hell no. I think he's a patsy who is actually a good Samaritan attempting to. His wife told him, "Hey, the authorities are asking, and I know you were at Delphi the other day, or at the the historic trail at Delphi." And she's like, "So you might want to go in and give a statement, because you said you saw those girls." And so he's like, "Oh shit, okay." He goes in, he gives a statement voluntarily to the authorities, and years later, allegedly a clerk finds this tip, gives it to an investigator. It seems like the timing of it all was perfect for the cover up. Here's the patsy, ding, ding, ding. We're going to put this dude away forever. So we cover up the fact that in Delphi, Indiana, not only in Delphi, but I believe the Indiana State Prison Complex is entirely infiltrated with these neo-pagan members of this Vinlander group. It's very strange, because they were even wearing the symbols on their so you had prison guards who were actually like apparently the defense team that were going in to meet with the alleged perpetrator. They realized after a certain point in time that they were wearing the exact same symbolic runes on their as a patch on their prison guard uniform. So they were straight up claiming allegiance to this neo-pagan organization that was already directly implicated behind this. By the way, a federal agent died while investigating this, and the FBI was then completely taken off the case directly afterward.
That's usually a sign of a cover-up.
He had been a part of a task force that was literally their priority. Their sole task was to investigate the neo-pagan ritualistic connections to the murder.
Wow.
Yes. And then all of a sudden, some maniac who just so happened to have a career as a prison guard in the Indiana State Prison, Federal Penitentiary, he just so happens to, and by the way, he had ran for mayor, I think, as well. And he was against gun legislation. I thought it was so hilarious. And then so this guy who's anti-gun, right, and had run for mayor, who has a career as a prison guard in Indiana, all of a sudden turns up at the federal at the federal building, right, in Indiana. Outside the federal building, he throws Molotov cocktails at the federal building with an arsenal in his truck and starts a firefight with the one and only individual who's on that task force that comes out to meet. Yes.
Right.
And then he gets murdered in cold blood.
Right.
This guy just so happens to somehow get away from the federal building, go to the nearby hospital, receive treatment for his wounds, and he's all good. But it's just absolutely insane to me once you start to realize that it goes far deeper than we could ever imagine. And this leads into modern day, a practice. Yeah. These occult practices that are very much still in vogue that,
So do you think that the Process Church is still, first of all, I believe it is, I think do they admit that they're active? Like what's the story?
They basically evolved
into their name.
No,
don't tell me. It's like a pet
animal
protection
refuge
thing. Yeah, animal rights. Yes, animal refuge. Yes. And
they're called the Best Friends Society.
Oh, that is so cute. Oh my god. They were
called initially their secondary title was like the Foundation Church of the Millennium or something like that. It was very, very like esoteric, new agey, in many ways, right? Which always kind of draws my attention. You know what I mean?
And the Good Guys Club is what the billionaires call themselves. Have you heard of this? Yes. You have to pledge to the Good Guys Club. I mean, could you imagine? It's the inversion, man. They can say whatever they want. It's the inversion.
It's the inverted moral landscape we're intended to embrace as well, which is, it's really happening to a lot of us who again, don't have those defense mechanisms, kind of formed and in place. So you're very vulnerable to these misconceptions, like I said before. But that last point, though, as far as this weird RFK dining with Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski the night of his death, obviously. And that was with.
Wait, what? I didn't know about this.
Oh, you didn't? Oh my God, no. This is so crazy. So yeah, actually, there is. I remember I covered it whenever I did my actual Charles Manson episode, because I think I put it at the very end because I couldn't believe that there was this kind of, again, stranger than fiction, right? Where we had mentioned Kerry Thornley earlier, how he had written Oh my God, it's basically the exact same story. I was trying to find it because it was such an early episode. Episode 6 was
crazy. I'm just seeing a little blurb that says Go Rightly's book, which I have, says that allegedly on the night before Robert Kennedy's assassination, June 5th, 1968, RFK had dinner with John Frankenheimer, and who is the
Manchurian candidate,
Roman Polanski, and his wife Sharon, and his technical advisor was one William Bryan, a hypnotist who, etc. Charles Manson, like Ronald Stark, was a huge fan of Robert Heinlein, who definitely was some kind of CIA. But let me just ask you, so if Roman Polanski was in town the night before, did he leave that day? Because Roman Polanski was not in LA the day that it happened.
Right, I know.
So he must have just left right away.
He had to have, you would think, but it's I know what was it? The hold on, I'm looking for, oh yeah, here it is. So basically, I just always found, like, obviously that connection to the Manchurian candidate is like extraordinary as far as just being very strange, leading up to obviously, it was the RFK assassination. That was the one I was thinking of, because basically I had forgotten that there were essentially Sirhan was at the event as well, which I found very strange. But so again, you have hold on, there's media world. I'm trying to find the exact reference to, here it is, the Manchurian Candidate, obviously written by Richard Condon. So basically, yeah, here we go. So obviously the John Frankenheimer Manchurian Candidate adaptation of the film, released October 24th, 1962, with the story of a covert communist plot to kill the president, obviously. Now, Frankenheimer had originally sought out JFK's approval of the film due to the heightened state of the political climate in America at the time. Jack urged him to follow through with the project anyway. By November 22nd, 63, he's obviously dead, and the film was pulled out of circulation until 1987, almost 25 years later. According to Peter Levenda, author of Sinister Forces, 5 years later in 68, Frankenheimer is giving a dinner party for Robert Kennedy. Attending the dinner party is Robert Kennedy, 4 of his children, and his wife, as well as Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski. Within 24 hours, Bobby Kennedy would be assassinated.
Okay, and it was a year later that Sharon Tate was assassinated in August
summer of
69.
69. Exactly. The death nail in the summer of love, right? Essentially kind of hijacking that, right? Honestly, like it's so sickening once you realize like that very prominent footprint that leads to Laurel Canyon and Lookout Mountain Laboratory, and that
my gosh, I've got that weird scenes inside the canyon. All right, so I think that's a good like introduction to the network of this stuff, and it does come right down to the. I mean, it really like so many events, especially these brutal murders, are related, can be traced to particular names and people, and to the Process Church. I mean, there are people whose names are certainly Grimstons. They have associations with these people, and brutal murders are not something that, if you are in connection with people who do brutal murders, I would say there's a connection. You know what I mean? It's not a coincidence. It's not something that just happens. It's something that's rarely happens. So definitely psych issues involved in that kind of thing, or manipulation. I mean, this is something that you can't deny as a factor in a lot of these episodes.
100%. And the last thing I have to say really is just because I promised that person the Sharon Tate point, but really I think it's just like mostly it's important to know that, and this is in the family, that this was mentioned, that Sharon Tate was initiated into witchcraft by a disciple of Aleister Crowley, right? Who this was a technical advisor on the set of the horror movie she made in London,
13 or whatever it was called.
San Francisco. And by the way, that San Francisco Satanist Anton LaVey played the role of the devil in Rosemary's Baby, which I had no understanding.
Did he really?
That's this claim from the family, which
I have some of these books I got when I was reading Ultimate Evil. The Anatomy of Witchcraft, which was the book that was written in the margin. The Shadow over Santa Susanna, one of the few books I accidentally way overpaid for because it was autographed, but not to me. Although it has his fingerprint in it. I don't know if that's
holy shit.
That could have value. Anyway, very weird. And I have to go back. This is Black Magic, Mind Control, and the Manson Family Mythos. This Adam Gorightly. Have you spoken to him?
That guy?
Isaac Weishaupt spoke to him. What's the story with him? Because some of these sources are this guy.
Yeah, Adam Gorightly is, I think he's one of those that you have to be very careful in accepting what he has to say.
I don't even want this. I don't like these books in my house.
Oh, I know. I feel you. I understand. Hey, by the way,
I started wearing a crucifix after I bought this one.
Good for you, because just having William on to do a solo interview, which, by the way, we should do an interview on my platform at some point as well, which would be a lot of fun. We could talk about anything, honestly.
I just want to hear I want you to dump your data on me. But anyway, keep going.
Down.
I don't do as much firsthand research anymore. I used to, but then I was like, okay, I get it.
Hey, we'll have a fun conversation.
Get it. Let's share a cocktail recipe.
We'll have a fun conversation either way.
Yes.
And it'll be very constructive, I think. But
so what was the Tate thing? Was it about her dad? It was just that she was an initiate.
So basically her father was Lieutenant Colonel Paul Tate. So already we have the fact that he has a career in military intelligence, by the way. And you're like, oh no, hold on. Michael Aquino, anyone? It's like
no, now I remember something about this. Go ahead.
It gets nuts. And by the way, Michael Aquino directly ties in with not only Gladio but Phoenix, which we should mention Phoenix at least the next time we
Yeah.
have this conversation, because very important to understand the level of torture that was involved in a lot of these sophisticated mind control techniques, right? And I mean, I'm talking terrible things. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that alone, very, very worthwhile and being aware of and skeptical of as well, because she has apparently there were these strange fascinations as far as the brother-in-law was concerned for both Satanism and military intelligence matters, which I didn't know this. And such circumstantial oddities, obviously, according to Ed Sanders, they don't take on much significance, but upon further observation, it lends more weight to any hypothesis for investigation that might arise from these disturbing hints, which include all these process connections. So obviously we have the Sirhan, proselytizing aspect of the fact that the process headquarters as well, which had just happened to be in London, where apparently Sirhan was directly tied in with the London chapter of the process, which I didn't realize was the case. And then he started frequenting these parties with members of the process in LA. So, there's a longer history tying in his and again, that racetrack that he worked at when he was kind of receiving this hypnotic training, I think, was it was owned by the mob. And then of course Than Eugene Cesar is he's kind of moonlighting as a security guard at the Ambassador during that time, while being affiliated with Howard Hughes' organization, which was being utilized as a plausible deniability cutout for the intelligence apparatus at the time, which people don't realize that apparently Nixon, before JFK ever took office, when Nixon was still part of the prior administration, it turns out that apparently he had contacted Howard Hughes, and he had really just kind of like urged him to, okay, we need to utilize, you in the private sector for various organizations will provide plausible deniability for the intelligence apparatus. And so Howard Hughes began to allow this with these cloak and dagger operations and domestic black sites, which were set up, which directly ties in Henry Lee Lucas, the Hand of Death cult.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that. We should talk about that at some point. That is nuts that he got his sentence was commuted.
Oh my God.
Oh my gosh. We have to talk. We'll have to. I want to talk about the Delphi. I want to talk about Henry Lee Lucas should be a focus just like on its own. Agreed. And so what do you want to tell people? I mean, I thought you did a really nice job in what was I listening to? I think it was about this stuff. It was a show. Let's see. I'm going to find it because I suggest people listen to it. It was The Ultimate Evil, Process Church of the Final Judgment. It's your show from, what was the date on this? 1 year ago. Yeah, here it is. And it was really, really well laid out, like a really good intro. This is on the Underclass podcast from May 28th, 2024. I'll put the link in the show notes. That was a great intro to this stuff that we're talking about today. So this was kind of like 102. That was 101. And I really enjoyed that. So where do you want to direct people to listen to your stuff?
All right. First of all, Monica, thank you so much. Honestly, like anytime I have an opportunity to, just kind of collaborate and have a meeting of the minds in a way, but really, I just like telling you mean a lot to me, just personally in my individual path.
So many people who like my show love your stuff, and so have told me, "Oh, you're gonna love him." You guys like totally have the same way of thinking. So so the feeling is mutual for sure.
Kismet. Thank you so much for having me on, though. It's like genuinely, I'm ultimately forever grateful, and that is kind of like this mentality I want to. It's something that I think it helps me be just on a daily basis. I attempt to kind of remain as close to that frame of at least that mindset and personal outlook as possible. because I think honestly, just in this very moment in time, there's a true appetite for genuine authenticity, and especially if it's just kind of like I wear my heart on my sleeve, you know,
People can
it's
sense
a
it. I learned
double-edged
that.
sword.
I learned that in radio. They said like maybe not video is
Yeah.
so maybe that's why they're pushing us to video. The the visual is very distracting. So
Mhm.
TV is way more shallow. TV news, radio people really listen to. So because I grew up in radio, it was basically for they said you cannot be insincere, people will hear it. And now and they want that, they can tell. So it is important to have that authenticity and seek the truth, and absolutely never go for that black pill. But also false hope is worse than a black pill.
Exactly. Yeah,
And too
because
much
that
hope, no
inevitably,
hope, or false hope. I'd
right.
rather just, yeah, it's actually it's a sin not to have hope. You
Ri
must have hope.
I agree with that. And, it's really through that very deception will inevitably you will facilitate, and usher through, honestly, your own dystopian nightmare. And so that alone is like, we have to always remain optimistic, but never can we sell out to the false hope, right? Because that
Yeah.
copium aspect of things is all a deception to placate the revolutionary class, at least
Yes.
psychologically.
And one big stumbling block is that if you have totally embraced the hopium, if you really think it's same thing with Obama, like this is the exact same scenario they played out with the threatening underclass of black people who were seeing through the Democrats at finally long last. So what did they do? They they gave them the everything all at once, and that's what they're doing with the kind of Ron Paul Republicans who were just like, I don't believe you anymore. But you can't, you can't, if you have, I don't blame anybody for having been so manipulated. Just don't stay committed to it. If you're starting to like see the cracks, forgive yourself, and just be
Exactly.
honest with yourself. Like you just have to be honest. Just try to be honest with yourself.
That's it.
Being fooled is not a sin. It's their sin.
Exactly.
But
And
you
through
have to,
open-mindedness and
yeah.
willingness to pursue these ideas objectively, I swear this is kind of, I've never felt more like on a daily basis. I pray more than ever in my life. Like, and I've never been like a overtly super religious person in any way. As far as like I never like claimed to understand to have the answers, but I swear I'm at a moment where I'm embracing some sort of spiritual path that I can't quite conceptualize, but I feel like I'm going in the right direction. And I think that like the way I've put it before is that through objectively seeking the truth, you find God somehow. And I feel like honestly, that's been my path, and
Oh yeah, I agree. Like one of the reasons I stopped doing the propaganda report, it was just it was 6 days a week. I was working, and even on Sundays I had to do like whatever kind of paperwork stuff. And I knew I just was not seeing the big picture because I was so daily immersed in every detail of what was going on. And I had hoped that if I took a step back, there were many reasons, but this was one of my hopes, was that if I took a step back, I could see the larger truth. And I was like, laughed at myself because like, oh, the larger truth is God, or if you want to say good, or if you want to
right,
say objective truth, or if you want to say good works, like whatever it is, it's very obvious and
right,
you can do it, and it's in your control. Even if you die trying, like it is in your control.
right. And I have really I've come to realize that, when people say they believe in God, you have to be very skeptical of what they mean by that as well. And
I always like to see if they look. I was at a music event, and some guy came out who had a very weird song that I thought was a little iffy. And he said, well, I'd like to just thank the Lord. And I looked, and I had missed it. And I looked at the person next to me. I said, did he look up or down? And they were like,
exactly. Which
they were like,
Lord
what is
are you
your problem? I'm like, oh, forget it. Sorry, I forgot.
right.
I'm in a normal place. Anyway,
100%.
well,
Oh,
Austin, it
shit,
was
here's
so
Jose
fun.
in the chat. Look at him.
Who said, yeah.
He fucked up. He thought I was having you on the show. He didn't know.
Oh,
But,
hey, Jose. No way, Jose.
yeah.
So, all right,
That's
well,
so
this
funny.
is it. It's over. And see, I can hear my schizo dog losing his mind. So I have to go deal with
Oh
that.
yeah.
You wouldn't believe there's like 2 closed doors between us and him. You probably still hear him barking. Here he comes. Hi. Anyway.
Oh man.
Hi. My house is turning upside down. So, anyway, so fun seeing you. And
Definitely.
I do encourage people to check out the Underclass podcast and all the other work that you do. You want to see the psycho? Come here, buddy.
Let's see him.
I got him from Golden
Aw.
Retriever Rescue, but he's half German Shepherd, which is why he's kind of schizo, and he's got broken teeth. Poor thing, because he was in I think it was because he was in a kennel, and they break the things anyway.
Oh my
I love you,
gosh.
buddy. I'm going to see you through it, but whew, I might have a heart attack.
I get it.
Okay, well, it's been such a pleasure. I'll see you soon. And
Sounds good.
if you wanted to, do you have a website where all your stuff is on, or is it Linktree, or where can people go? 'Cause
Really?
you have, or even just Twitter, like where people can go
Yeah.
to find everything of yours.
All right. So my plugs are basically the best place is really kind of like any real audio streaming platform for sure. You can find the Underclass podcast for the most part, but the best place to support me, the full archive is on YouTube, and it's also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, right? But I will say on YouTube has pulled a few of mine.
Yeah, you got to pull them yourself. That's what I do.
Yeah, exactly. Pizzagate, JFK, the Hitler episode. there were a few, but you know what I mean.
Some people get to keep their Hitler episodes up, though.
That's true.
That's
I talked
kind
about
of weird.
Hitler under mind control, and that was apparently frowned upon. But anyway, so beyond that, I started a Rumble as well. It's in its infancy more. I kind of really just use it as a destination for my live streams at this point. It's going to be a real headache to get my full archive in there. But
no, don't
one
worry
day,
no, just make it for the future.
Right?
You don't have to go back. So what's the best central thing? What's your what is your exact Twitter handle? Maybe that's a good place for people to go to find everything.
Theater Thug AWP is my
Theater Thug AWP.
Theater Thug AWP, and it's THEATRE, like the
British
the classy like the classy theatrical expression.
Thugs will do.
Yeah, there it is. And yeah, other than that, man, if any of my works ever resonated with you guys, I got nothing but love for you. And the best place to support me would be patreon.com/the Underclass podcast. And there is an incentive to support me as well. Even at the lowest level of $3, you'll get the paywalled show, which is the premium content with Brad and Sam. So that's
I didn't even know you were doing that. When is that?
It's
it
called
live?
Whatever This Is. And
is it live?
No, we basically, we record it, and just like really post it the next day, I think, to the patrons.
Yeah, okay. But you can get that on Patreon. That's awesome.
Yep.
Very fun.
Super fun, man. It's been a lot of fun just having that opportunity, and Sam's like, I love him so much. It's like law of abundance, such a good person. He's
and you can see even when he's like, oh, I can't talk shit about that guy. Like, I really can't. Like, you're just like, Sam, I mean, you can't. He's just one of those few people. I just like, you know what? It's no problem.
Right.
Just like Ron Paul. Like, I'm like, it's just, whatever. I understand. You can't say 9/11 was an inside job. Obviously, you have a job.
Right.
It's not going to work. But anyway, so it's
beyond that, my final plugs are, I'm sorry, Monica, I always forget to plug. And Jose always gives me shit too, because
do it.
I never remember anything. But
do it. You got the chance. Go for it.
Awesome. Thank you. But we do also have a live stream that we do on Tuesdays, right, which you've been a part of.
Yes.
Called Already Dead, that we do every Tuesday night at 9:30 Eastern time. And then we do a call-in portion as well about midway through. And beyond that, we've kind of started doing a morning show as well. So like Monday through Friday, usually my days now of where I'm running the show are usually Monday and Tuesday. And if Jose can join, he'll join, and we'll just BS about, whatever is happening, breaking news, different things, as well as kind of use it as a platform to like sift through new information. And as we're kind of like investigating certain things that are very interesting for potential solo projects or something. And then and that's called, we've been doing the morning dump. That's the name of that. Yeah. But we've been having a good time with that. And beyond that, man, the Underclass podcast for sure. But nothing but love for you guys. And I'll I think I'm going on gray pilled with my buddy Jules later today. So we're probably
you have a long day. So I'm going to say goodbye, but hang on because I want to make sure I've got your recording. Thank you all for coming. I'm so glad it ended up being live. It was way more fun with you people here, and always a pleasure. Thanks for coming, Austin, and we'll see you guys soon.